The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, and non-controversial. They are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight, there are 4 items listed under the consent agenda. Does anyone on council wish to remove an item off the consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing no raised hands, I need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Councilman Madera,
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Councilman Hurst,
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Will the city attorney please read the titles?
Ordinance 2258, an ordinance amending the Commerce City Sales and Use Tax Code, Article 1 of Chapter 20 of the Commerce City Revised Municipal Code, to adopt and incorporate certain standardized sales and use tax definition recommended by the Colorado Municipal League and accomplishing related matters. Ordinance 2262, an ordinance amending the 2020 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant Funds in the amount of $11,804.60 for the Bulletproof Vest program in the police department and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. Ordinance 2264, an ordinance amending the 2020 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by appropriating a portion of the unencumbered fund balance of the Commerce City Brighton School District Use Tax Fund in the amount of $714,450 for installation of synthetic turf at Stewart Middle School and transferring $500,000 from the CCBSD fund to the CIPP fund for sports field improvements at 3 locations and authorization of the expenditure thereof. Ordinance 2267, an ordinance amending the 2020 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of funds from Adams County for state funds received through the Census Outreach Grant Program and funds from the Regional Transportation District for public art at the North Metro Rail Line and authorizing related matters.
I have a motion and a second, and the city attorney has read the titles. We'll take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Madera,
Yes.
Councilmember Alan Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Noble,
Yes.
Councilmember Guardiola,
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank,
Yes.
Mayor Huseman.
Yes,
Passes unanimously 9-0.
thank you very much. Next on the agenda is an update on the city's response to the COVID-19 crisis. Will City Manager McBroom please provide that update?
Thank you, Mayor Huseman, and good evening, everyone. First of all, I appreciate Mayor Huseman calling this special meeting to give us an opportunity to provide some updates. One quick note before I provide an overview update. The update will be provided mostly verbally. We do have the oil and gas update and the Suncor update where materials were uploaded into the packet. The other updates, particularly related to COVID-19, we're going to be providing verbally. I'll be getting a lot of help from other key staff members. It's such a dynamic environment. Things change so rapidly. Any information we might have uploaded last week may have been outdated by the time we had a chance to present it to you. So I do have some introductory remarks, kind of an overview of where we are as an organization, and then I'm going to hand it off to other staff to provide more detailed updates. What we'd like to do is walk through those updates and then provide an opportunity for council members to ask questions after we walk through all of these updates. So from my perspective, we're hearing this week that we're nearing the peak locally of a worldwide pandemic. Without a doubt, it's shaping everything that we're doing. State and national emergencies have already been declared, and Commerce City is operating under a local disaster. We are all under a statewide stay-at-home order. Public health and public safety is our primary focus, while we also acknowledge some role we play in minimizing the social and economic impacts of the pandemic to businesses and residents in our community. We are in crisis mode, there's no doubt about that, and are operating very differently with still relatively minor impacts to normal operations. I want to stress we're not in panic mode. Regular city council meetings have been canceled and all city facilities have been closed to the public at least through April 17th. I'll be talking about that a little bit later in the meeting tonight. Before sharing more city government updates, I want to take a moment to thank and appreciate how difficult this crisis has been on our first responders, the public health community, and the healthcare industry. As challenging as this has been for us, I can't imagine how stressful this is for folks who work in these other fields and their families. We are all beyond grateful for their selfless service, which in many cases puts their own lives at risk. We're hearing about heroic efforts every day from all these hardworking folks. I mentioned earlier that we're in crisis mode, but we're not in panic mode. As an organization, we do have an excellent vision statement, an important mission statement, and great organizational values. Those things all serve as guideposts for us on a daily basis, especially when we're in a crisis. We have an excellent incident action plan with clear objectives that have enabled us to stay focused, increase our effectiveness, and it helps us to be calm and confident in these uncertain times. It is very stressful. City staff is not panicking, and I see examples of great results every day. On March 12th, we activated the city's incident command system. We opened our emergency operations center and began executing what we refer to as the infectious disease annex of our incident action plan. On that day, we also closed all city facilities to the public and continued as many other city operations at normal service levels as possible. Some employees work solely as part of the incident command team, as part of the emergency operations center under the direction of the incident commander. Most employees now have dual roles. Some employees, again, are focused solely on the incident action plan. Many of us have roles within the incident command structure, and we also have roles running normal city operations. One example is our finance department. Folks in finance are collecting information for the incident command team regarding expenditures related to the crisis, but they're also performing normal duties like payroll and accounts payable work. Clear objectives within the incident action plan combined with direction we've already provided through our administrative work plan have allowed us to daily assess priorities, form new work teams where that's been necessary. It's helped us adapt and solve problems. I've been observing excellent communication and teamwork and great collaboration in these cross-functional teams. And that's what it's taken. It's been able to perform in these dual roles as part of the incident command structure and in our normal organizational structure. Chief Nichols serves as the primary incident commander. He will walk through his update after me next and share more details than I am here. Several employees also will share updates, so we'll dive a little bit deeper both into our COVID-19 response and talk about how city operations have been impacted as the result of this crisis. My role specifically, certainly there's key decisions that I have to make both as part of the incident command team and as Chief Executive Officer of city government. But another crucial role for me is providing support and encouragement to our employees and modeling our values. Key messages that we share frequently are to pace ourselves. This is a very unique crisis. We've never experienced a crisis like this that's lasted such a long time. So pacing ourselves is really important so that we can continue to perform at a high level no matter how long this crisis lasts. It's also important to treat each other with kindness, take care of ourselves, and be on the lookout for the well-being of those around us. And I also expect employees to stay calm and focused and stay confident. There's a great deal of uncertainty. Again, I think we have good plans in place We've got good staff teamwork going on to adapt those plans and adjust to the realities that seem to change on almost an hourly basis. Because we provide as a city very few human services, most human services functions in this country are provided at the county level. And because our revenue is a bit uncertain, we have not launched new human services. There are several council members who have discussed with me whether we should be offering some human services, whether that be additional services for people who are homeless, additional support for residents who are impacted economically by this crisis. City Council does have the ability to reappropriate funds and develop new programs to serve the community during this crisis, and that could very well be part of Council's discussion tonight about the crisis. The big concern from a city government standpoint is it'll be another couple of weeks before we have any good, reliable information to understand how our revenue has been impacted as a result of the crisis. Our revenues lag about a month behind. We've just completed booking in March revenues. In March, we were booking in February revenues. So it'll be a couple of weeks before, and really towards the end of the month before we booked in March revenue. And that'll be the first indicator to us how this crisis is affecting our revenue. I certainly care deeply about our employees. As essential as our work is as city government, employee safety is our top priority, and it requires constant effort. Guidelines from Tri-County Health, state and federal government are changing all the time. We're adapting to those quickly. Employees reporting to work do have the availability of personal protective equipment, and they are encouraged to take personal responsibility for their health and well-being. We are continually updating our work rules to assure all employees, whether they are performing essential functions or other city operations, are as safe as possible. As of today, no city employee has been diagnosed with COVID-19. We're very proud of that, and we're doing everything we can to keep it that way. Employees with known exposures are directed to self-quarantine, and we continue to pay them out of concern for their well-being and the well-being of other employees in the organization. A few words about information management. Sharing accurate, timely information is crucial in a crisis. We get lots of guidance about sharing information through the incident command system. That's led to our daily emergency operations center situational reports. I've talked to some of you, and you have a desire for more robust information, perhaps on a weekly basis. I'd very much like your feedback about that tonight. There is a bit of a risk in a crisis of information overload. I've fallen victim to that myself. There's so much information out there that it can be hard to manage all of that, but I'm eager to hear what council's expectations are, and if you can provide me some direction tonight on the amount and the timeliness of that information, that would be very, very helpful. Just a few wrap-up comments. Though we're operating internally in two parallel structures, that incident command structure and also sort of normal operations structure, the incident command team does have a priority for city operations and city resources. Normal city operations, to the extent we're able to do them, are secondary to the essential services that are being managed through the incident command team. We're certainly not a perfect organization. When operating in a crisis, I don't think the goal is to be perfect. It's about making the best decisions we can with the information that we have available, having effective feedback loops, making adjustments, and constantly adapting to the new situations around us. I believe we have stayed focused on our incident action and plan objectives and our organization's mission and values. By doing so, I think it's helped us be very effective despite, again, the uncertainty in the world around us. I'm so very grateful to the city employees that work for the city of Commerce City. Our employees have responded extremely well. Though many of us aren't public health professionals or healthcare professionals, we do a great deal of essential work in our community, and it's incredibly stressful to perform those duties in a prolonged crisis. Employees' families are impacted just as much as everybody else's. We do have great employees. I really believe that. I've seen great examples of that over the last 3 weeks. It certainly makes me very proud to be the city manager. We have lots of cross-departmental teams working together, demonstrating our values, which are helping them be very effective. A lot of employees are working extended hours, but they remain fully committed to serving the community. They really are here because they have a desire to serve the community. I'm going to end, though, with what I started with, this gratitude, this debt of gratitude that we owe to first responders, healthcare workers, and people in the public health industry. We've even learned over the last couple of weeks of the unique risks and stresses of employees that work for our grocery stores in our community. These folks put themselves at risk every day, and I know we're all terribly grateful of the services that they've provided back to us. So those are my introductory overview comments. I would like to turn it over next to Chief Nichols, who can talk more specifically about the incident command team. And then again, we'll, as we wrap up this staff overview and all these updates, we'll come back and answer any questions that you have. We've structured these updates to be more highlights, knowing you may have a lot of questions for us. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Chief Nichols.
Chief Nichols, you're unmuted.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mayor, City Council members. Just want to again thank the staff that have allowed us to make this transition to incident management as seamless as possible. Everybody has certainly pitched in and helped out where they can, and we've certainly had no shortage of assistance in maintaining continuity of operations. But I have to give a special shout out to our emergency manager, Kirk Dominic, who recognized the seriousness of this event while it was still occurring overseas in China. In February, he actually started working on the city's communicable disease operation plan in anticipation that what we were starting to see in China and then ultimately in Italy was going to come our way. And he was probably right by about 30 days. So his foresight allowed us to plan appropriately for this level of pandemic exposure. A little bit about the actual pandemic exposure itself. This pandemic is causing challenges for the world that are unprecedented. Usual incident management involves getting your best and brightest people in the room that understands incidents. They know how to manage it, and everyone knows what the expectation is. When you're dealing with an exposure, we have a lot of really gray areas that we are figuring out as we go. And so there are some challenges that are just unprecedented. And I would also argue that our normal processes for dealing with an emergency are being challenged. When we start talking about PPE gear, and if you've watched the news, it is not uncommon to see the shortages that everyone is having. And the Commerce City Police Department and the city as a whole are notwithstanding or also dealing with some of those. I also want to emphasize that this is not just a local disruption to operations. It is a global disruption. When I mention we can't get PPE gear, it isn't because it isn't available, but other communities are in dire needs. And so if I could stress anything to the residents that are watching and to you and yourselves, I would tell you that there is going to be no cavalry coming to save us from this virus. We are managing this thing as best we can. We're putting the best foot forward, making the best decisions, and we're doing everything we can to sort of keep this thing at bay and in a controllable and isolated incident. Furthermore, this is a whole community type event. If we were dealing with a fire or a barricaded suspect, I have plenty of experts that could probably figure this out on their own. But when we talk about a whole community event, this means everybody has a part to play, from the media, politicians, first responders, businesses, nonprofits, families, they all play a part in managing this event. And so the collective us is what's going to put us in a better light for managing this event. And so the status for today, and again, these numbers may be off. This was last updated at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So Tri-County Health generally updates at 4 o'clock, but I hadn't seen an update. So in Colorado, currently, there are about 25,000 people that have tested positive. 4,950 of those came back positive. 25,000 were tested. Almost 5,000 positive cases have come back in Colorado. There have been 140 deaths and over 924 people have been hospitalized. In Adams County, there are 346 positive cases and there have been 9 deaths reported in Adams County. And I know that number has gone up by at least 5 from news at Brighton reported about a assisted living home in their jurisdiction. And as far as Commerce City is concerned, we've had 31 positive cases. We have not had any deaths that we're aware of, and we don't get the number of how many people have been tested. So this is in fact knocking on our doorsteps. And so I want to cover, and I'll be very brief on what we've done. Again, most as the city manager mentioned, his first step was creating a COVID-19 task force that was centered around the idea of centralizing government functions in response to the likelihood that the virus was going to extend in our jurisdiction. That foresight allowed us to do a couple of things. Again, I mentioned this, the emergency manager dusted off the communicable disease operation plan. That task force reviewed that plan. We made some changes and alterations to it, and then we put it into action. We also identified priorities and objectives that would deal with an exposure-related pandemic. These are very different from other types of emergencies that we would handle. We are fighting something that cannot be seen, that doesn't care what neighborhood you live in, how much money you make, what color you are, or what language you speak. It just doesn't care. And so our ability to corral that was going to be extremely important. It also got the different departments to specific response plans that correlated with the 4 response levels that were identified in our communicable disease plan that I outlined earlier for you a few weeks ago. That COVID-19 task force created several important outcomes that are important for me to mention. Number one, we quickly realized that the Emergency Operations Center was going to be crucial for sort of facilitating discussion and coordinating the city's response. And so this is the 25th day that the EOC has been stood up. And the job is to activate, it was activated so that we could monitor and provide guidance on the exposure pandemic to city operations. That COVID-19 task force also recommended that all state and work-related conferences and travel be canceled. Also recommended that Commerce City facilities be closed to the public, which quite frankly, we were the first in Colorado to do. City manager also issued some guidelines to city staff regarding the exposure pandemic, what the expectation was, what we should do, and how we should protect ourselves. A few days later, and this is all happening within a span of about 3 days, city attorney and the city manager prepared a draft local disaster declaration, which was later signed. And the city manager, within a matter of 3 days, went from a level 4 to a level 3 and ultimately to a level 2 response where we currently sit. And when the Emergency Operations Center got stood up, we started working on reviewing some specific department response level plans and incorporated those into essential versus non-essential functions. We use what in the business is called an incident management matrix because we wanted to provide department directors with some objective criteria for us to balance against their department tasks. So in a nutshell, we wanted to take the incident priority, safeguarding life, returning the community to normal, and balance that versus the impact to the city operations and how those decisions were going to impact the community. And those decisions should take into account the scale and magnitude of the event, the priorities, and providing some balance. First things first, last things last, as an example. And that incident management matrix was used by the departments to provide a proper response level in determining what functions of city government would be limited, altered, and suspended. For example, because of the exposure level, we understand that our mail room delivery process is going to be challenging. CDC recommended that mail sit for 24 hours before it's delivered. That has an impact on city operations, as small and minor a detail as that is. We were tasked with creating mail room handling procedures. Where are we going to store the mail? And when city facilities aren't open and departments aren't picking it up, how's that going to get distributed? So it's just one small example of some of the things that we were tasked with doing. Another example is the decontamination of workspace. as long as people were still coming in the building and working, what is the expectation with making sure workspace areas were clean and disinfected before you started your day, during your day, and when you ended. These are all things that came through the EOC that we had to work on solving. And probably our most primary function that we've been doing is monitoring official sources of information. The city manager alluded to a little bit earlier. There is information flying from all sorts of places. There are national projected tasks that are out. There are at least 5 or 6 county level projection data that's available, and it all intermingles and cross sections. And so we literally have a full-time planning section doing nothing but monitoring all the information that's coming through, deciding what's important and sharing that information as quickly as possible. One of the other things we did is we became responsible for procuring equipment and supplies that were going to last the city through the duration of the incident. So PPE gear, disinfectant, hand soap, and all of the things that were necessary for us to maintain continuity of operations. We started to go about securing that stuff. And then finally, the most important task that we do is examine and adjust protocols daily. As new CDC guidelines come out, we take a look at those guidelines and we make a determination as to how they're going to fit into our operations. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the competing stay-at-home orders that were coming out. Those require somebody to literally break those things down and determine at an operational level how we're going to function. So for some notable EOC activity, we work with both school districts to coordinate their closures because, again, having children out of school with no rec centers to attend and no parks to go play at is going to impact, quite frankly, city operations. So we wanted to work with the school districts and coordinate that. The EOC is also tracking daily staffing levels for the city staff. Once our levels fall to a certain level where we don't have employees available, there's an opportunity for us to potentially raise our response level. And at that point, we will start to see a significant scale back of citywide operations. We also wanted to make sure that we coordinated city functions related to the management of the incident. For example, working with our IT department to realign necessary equipment so that folks could work from home, securing this platform that we're actually managing a city council meeting on. We also coordinated with our local businesses on their community functions, services, and relevancy. Our grocery stores, we worked with all of our local grocery stores to relation to making sure their supply chains were remaining uninterrupted. Senior shopping hours came out of that and reduced hours so that we could get the bulk of our community in there to shop accordingly. We also worked with our banks, our food banks, to make sure that food was readily available for those in dire need. We contacted and continue to work with all of our assisted living facilities and hospices that are located in the city to make sure that their emergency response plans were up to date. And we had an idea in the event they started to experience catastrophic exposure, we'd be able to step in and assist. We also work with our bars and restaurants as a result of the new orders coming online. This is something we're very proud of. We actually sent, between us and, I don't want to steal economic development's thunder, but we actually visited all of our restaurants and bars in the city to provide them with guidelines on the new directives and to make sure that they stayed in compliance. We also work with the marijuana industry to do the same thing, as well as our transient population. We went around to the various transient gathering sites, offered services, and wanted to make sure that they were maintaining the social distancing standards as best they can. And probably one of the most critical functions we've done out of the EOC was communicate. With all of this information flowing in and out, it required us to literally be very confident in our ability to deliver information, not only to our staff, but to the city and the community as well, so that they knew exactly where we were. And, you know, again, don't want to steal anybody's thunder. I'm sure community relations will talk about this. But we came up with a pretty dynamic way of sharing information, reference COVID-19 via our city website. As you can imagine, when city facilities get shut down, the police department does not. And our phones were ringing off the hook with businesses, restaurants, all wanting the latest and greatest information. So getting those two websites stood up was critical for our staff to be able to funnel people to 1 or 2 locations where they could get the greatest and latest updated information about what was occurring in Commerce City. And I can tell you it's reduced our phone calls literally by almost 2/3. It's been a really great help. It also allows for the consistency location for people to locate information. And so some next steps, city manager directed a few weeks ago that we put together a return to normalcy task force that's going to be managed out of the Emergency Operations Center. I can tell you, given this exposure and some of the information that we're starting to see, we have to understand that we're not going to be able to end the epidemic, end the pandemic on a Monday and return to full city operations on a Tuesday. That just is not going to happen. There are several things that we need to take a look at. What are our capabilities going to look like? What can we bring back in a day, in a week, and sometime even months? And that's going to require some careful planning so we don't preemptively bring something back only to have it cause a disaster in city operations. So those are some of the things that this task force is going to be looking at and making recommendations to the city manager. We do have some examples of some things that have been currently shut down simply because the way this exposure is working, we're just simply not going to have enough time to plan them. So as an example, the National Night Out that normally takes place in August, as a staff, we will not be able to get that event off the ground, at least not to the scale and magnitude that we had been doing it. We usually start that planning in March. With all the other entities dealing with the same sort of thing, there's no way we were going to be able to plan for that. Our police summer camp that we typically will do has also been canceled. Great opportunity for the youth of Commerce City. Unfortunately, the level of planning that goes into that to line people up and commit to dates, it was starting to get too hairy, so we just made the decision that probably best not to do it. And then the event that you probably are most familiar with, the Memorial Day Parade. We start that planning process several months ago, and because of the exposure and the risk of gathering that many people together, that is also an event that has been tabled pending further. There are some other operational concerns that different departments are dealing with as to what they're not going to be able to do, but a lot of that will come out of that return to normalcy task force that's working out of the EOC. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank some of our local supporters. We've had great support from our community that have donated a ton of equipment. And when we sent out a request for some assistance, we've had quite a few people step up and work with us to get the things we needed. So for example, Burco Corporation, located in northern Commerce City, donated sanitizer, disinfectant. King Soopers, both locations, continue to support us with supplies. Walmart supports us with general supplies as well. Reunion Elementary School donated sanitizing wipes and hand sanitizer. Mystic Mountain Distillery, he didn't give us alcohol, but he lives in town, so he gave us a substantial amount of hand sanitizer to make sure that we can have continued operations. And then on a regional level, local distilling out of Golden, Colorado also supplied us with quite a bunch of hand sanitizers. And then the other regional agencies have been just as supportive in participating in making sure that our operations are continuing to run as flawless as they can, and we can continue to perform a good deed for the citizens of Commerce City. And so on that note, Mr. City Manager, I don't have anything else.
Troy Smith is next to provide an update on his internal services departments.
Deputy City Manager Smith, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. My video is starting up. There we go. Very good. I wanted to start by talking about government affairs. As has been mentioned, we have been inundated with both information and requests for staff to participate in virtual meetings from all levels of government and most of our partners. Staff has been vetting information we receive for relevance to our residents and our staff and for the council, and disseminating that information through our communication strategy, which I will cover more detail later in tonight's update. A couple of quick notes from our partners. Our schools obviously are closed for the remainder of the year and all doing remote learning. We're working to consider alternative functions with them, such as graduations and other events they are looking at rescheduling, as the chief mentioned. The refuge has seen a 200% increase in visitation since the governor signed the stay-at-home order. So a significant number of people are going out onto the refuge, and fishing was most recently bringing an additional 1,000 anglers to the site. It's 2 reservoirs, floating boardwalks, and piers. As a result of their inability to mitigate close contact, narrow passages, etc., the refuge has postponed and closed fishing until further notice. As with the state parks, they believe that they will remain open through this period of time. But I know that Dave's evaluating that on a daily basis with his ability to manage the number of people that are going out there. On a call twice a week with the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, and they're doing an all-level government coordination call. People from the governor's office, every state department, local municipalities, and counties participate in that call. Of note, out of our last call on last Friday, the housing division of DOLA will be releasing $8 million in funding for shelters and individuals experiencing homelessness. It is our belief that that money will be assimilated through county governments at this point in time, but we're still waiting guidance on that. The governor tends to continue to hold press conferences every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday throughout the stay-home order. And that will be done whether or not he has any significant announcements to make. And tonight's the first night he's moved to prime time. He is currently addressing Coloradoans on the COVID-19 issues right now. I have a twice weekly call with the White House Office of Governmental Affairs. Those of you that were on our trip to DC will remember the staff that was there. Those are the very same people who are coordinating these weekly calls to reinforce the White House's task force whole government approach. And those calls typically include members of the President's COVID task force providing updates for all sorts of individuals. Last call I was on, there were over 950 participants in that call. We receive daily briefing documents from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, the White House Task Force, the Governor's Office, Metro Mayor's Caucus, the FBI, the City and County Managers Association of Colorado, the International Association of City Managers, CIRSA, our insurance risk pool, Tri-County Health Department, the Commerce City EOC puts out 2-time daily reports. Our state and federal policy advocates are putting out daily reports and updates for us. And then periodically we're receiving updates from our state and federal officials. To say we have reached information overload would be an understatement. I'd like to walk briefly through a few information updates for each of our operating departments in the internal services side, so you have an idea of the body of work that those folks have been in working with. Over the past 4 weeks, the IT department has processed 628 help desk tickets. That's a 26% increase in our normal activity. That's about an average of 31 tickets a day. And that's primarily due to the number of staff members that we have working remotely and needing assistance getting various functions set up and running. We have an IT staff member dedicated on a daily basis to be on site in the EOC to be assisting with that operation. And thanks to the forethought of our IT director, Justin Bingham, we were already online with Zoom to evaluate this product for use in the city during the course of this year. So when this pandemic started, he had already engaged them in contract discussions about one of their products, which actually put us right at the front of the pipeline to get to where we are today. Had we not started that process, I don't think we would be having this meeting tonight on Zoom. So my thanks to our IT department and to Justin in particular for having the foresight to be navigating this technology. Of course, setting up these remote meetings and managing them is an ongoing trial and error basis. We literally implemented this technology on the fly. Since we've done this, multiple cities throughout Colorado and even other states have called our IT department asking for assistance and advice about running remote meetings and particularly running public meetings such as this one. We improved our online video streaming. This was an issue that council had brought up several months ago. During the course of this process, the vendor was already scheduled to come do this work, and our streaming of council meetings on the internet and site are now done in full high definition quality. The chief also mentioned the redeployment of assets. That was a significant undertaking of IT to understand how many of our 400 plus employees needed remote technology, how many of them had it, and then repurposing and assigning them equipment so that they could work remotely. That was a major undertaking. Not only did they get those people set up to work remotely, they provided countless hours of training to individuals who had new equipment assigned to them to be able to function and operate that equipment. Our VPN system, which provides remote access to our proprietary systems, things not accessible through the web, it has a constraint. It's only a one size of pipe. And so the number of users that we have out working remotely is larger than we've ever had before. And that pipe has been tested on multiple occasions. That increased remote traffic load has overloaded our bandwidth and our firewall at peak times on occasion. The IT departments provided training to end users about how to access information through that system, but not remain in the system to complete the work that they need to do. Moving on to our finance department. As you might imagine, and that was referred to by the city manager, making projections about revenue, incoming revenue, lost revenue, both for our local businesses and for the city has been a significant undertaking from our finance staff, and one that's very difficult to do. And I'll walk through some of those details in just a moment. The finance department has 24 total staff, 2 vacancies, 22 of their staff are working remotely the majority of the time. 3 days a week, staff rotate in to perform some really key functions, supervision of people doing accounts payable, checks requests, and our payroll functions all have to be done while on site. And so people rotate through the office on a day-to-day rotating basis in order to maintain social distancing and still be able to complete that key work. Our bank balances are reviewed on a daily basis to ensure liquidity of our assets. Our banking courier was suspended due to the facility closure, and so this means our financial staff and police escort are doing weekly deposits of incoming checks, cash, and other revenue that we receive. We are talking with our investment advisor at Wells Fargo for market review and investment decisions on a weekly basis. And our checks are being processed for AP on an average of about 125 checks a week. We had to develop new payroll procedures, coding for expenditures and payroll, accounting for overtime, for reimbursement tracking through FEMA. All of those policies have been developed and those coding systems have been given out to our employees impacted by the COVID-19 event. I will mention that many of the new procedures and laws and policies that we have been adopting and formulating coming out of this have truly been being done on the fly. They take countless hours of research to figure out what the new law from the state or the Division of Labor or the federal government means, and then how that applies to our unique operation, and then writing a policy about the implementation of those things has been a significant staff undertaking, both in legal and HR and in finance in particular. All staff members across the city were required to complete 2 ICS training classes in order to receive FEMA reimbursement. So as a result, we have been tracking and ensuring that all staff members have been able to complete that training online. Our sales tax main line has been transferred out of the office to a sales tax technician, and 33 calls were taken in just this past week off of that line. Finance has emailed a budget expenditure report to each department, asking them to reevaluate their 2020 expenditures for contracts and line items. This was a request of the city managers to begin evaluating areas where we could potentially save money over time to accommodate the losses that we're experiencing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Those reports by each department are being submitted to the EOC, and then the city manager's team will review those and consider making financial consideration options for the city council moving forward. Key impact areas for the finance department as a result of this: the 2020 audit and financial statement preparation is underway with our consultant, Knight Bailey. And typically that starts on, the audit work starts on April 20th. There's an awful lot of work that goes into setting that up. We have not requested, nor has the state auditor's office given a blanket delay to this process. So we're preparing to run forward with that 2020 audit on our 2019 expenditures for the state of Colorado. Due to the normal 20-day reporting delay for taxes, the effects of this on businesses and purchases will not be fully evident until April tax filings have been received. We also have offered a 3-week grace period to grant taxpayers for filing returns. So that stacks on top of that delay. And as a result, March tax impacts for COVID-19 revenue issues will not be known until at least May 11th. And for April, revenue impacts will not be known until June 10th. So you can see predicting some of these things is going to be a bit out as a result of not only the delay in the taxes being paid, but also the grace period we've extended to businesses to pay that. The 2021 budget planning certainly has to be amended. The budget calendar is already out of sync with what we had planned to work on for the development of the budget internally, in preparation of bringing that budget to city council in the summertime. New processes are being developed on a daily basis in addition to those. Year to date, we've done 33 audit engagements that are complete and have been assessed. We have 85 audits currently in process, and we've had 2 missed payments for audits as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, I should say. We've canceled or postponed 7 audits to date as a result of this condition we are in. And finally, just talk about predicting and the difficulty predicting revenue and revenue losses as a result of this. Not only will we not have the information, historical information coming in, but we are anticipating that the reduction in the price of oil, the less sales of gasoline and products from Suncor, in addition to many of our businesses being closed, will have a dramatic impact on our revenue collection. Somewhere between 25 to 30% is kind of a baseline number that we have been working with. And when it comes to taxes, we and many other municipalities are expressing a very similar position and believe that businesses are collecting these taxes from residents or customers who are entrusted in passing that tax revenue on to the city to provide services such as police and fire emergency responses. So it's not additional revenue for those businesses to maintain, and most of the cities we've been in contact with are not offering the grace period that we have offered to pay that revenue. And they will be looking at working with taxpayers individually. All right, I'm going to move on to human resources now and talk about our personnel briefly. Again, nowhere better seen than in our policy writing that these new laws that are being enacted require an awful lot of careful analysis as we are developing policy. And our legal team and our HR team have worked very closely together to develop 5 or 6 different policies we've implemented since this time related to the management of our human resources. We have 367 actual full-time employees out of 401 budgeted. We have 29 vacant full-time positions, 307 variable hour, part-time, and seasonal employees. We have been averaging 155 employees working on site in each 24-hour period since this pandemic began, and that does include public safety employees. We've had an average of 151 employees working remotely in each 24-hour period. 32 FTEs, 32 full-time employees, and 206 variable hour employees are out on COVID-19 leave. That's a total of 238 employees using some form of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. HR has conducted 7 virtual trainings related to these new policies and procedures for supervisors, and they've created an online training program for remote workers. So let me talk real briefly about that and give you an example of how this leave is working intermittently. In the courts division, we have 4 full-time employees. We've cut back the labor force in that area to 1 employee being on site every day. So each employee rotates 1 day in the office. When those 4 employees are not at work, prior to this week, they were on administrative leave, COVID leave, as a result of the CARES Act, and they were being compensated for us not being able to put them to work. Moving forward and starting this week, those employees will be engaged in online learning, the online learning program HR has developed, and they will be engaged in doing other tasks during that period of time, which will reduce the amount of COVID leave that they will have while they're working. So that leave is used intermittently, and we have other work areas where that is also the case. HR, of course, has been responding to multiple employee inquiries about benefits, about pay, about leave, about these new policies. They continue to work on communicating with United Healthcare, where we have 340 employees enrolled in that plan, plus their family members. We're providing information on resources about virtual visits and accessing doctors and nurses during this period of time. United Healthcare also has 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week emotional support line, which we have made well known to our employee base. And there's no cost testing available for those that have symptoms if they can get the test. HR has provided ergonomics from home training to employees in this virtual office environment. And they conducted a virtual new hire orientation for 9 employees early on in this process. I say early on because as of the 17th of March, our recruitment efforts have been suspended. So we are no longer accepting applications and processing those, interviewing and offering positions to individuals during this period of time. Just that move to stop recruitment required an awful lot of coordination with a number of candidates who were in the pipeline. They had people scheduled for in-person interviews that had to be canceled and rescheduled. We've postponed over 20 interviews. We've emailed more than 50 candidates who applied for positions to let them know that our recruitment is suspended until further notice. They've had to update 36 job postings as a result of that decision. HR has communicated with our EAP providers to ensure that our employees have access to virtual services for coping with traumatic events. and talking with children about infectious disease outbreak. We have had a number of inquiries about people's retirement plans, their retirement plans, which the city contributes to through ICMARC, and a number of people wanting to have one-on-one visits with those folks. So we have been constantly facilitating updated information for staff members who are obviously concerned about what has happened in the stock market and how that impacts their long-term viability. In the coming week, HR will be providing updates to all employees on benefits, wellness, and staying safe while working at home. We continue to offer wellness lunch and learns and schedule additional learning webinars for employees as this continues. Shifting gears to our community relations division, we have one representative of community relations who staffs the EOC on site Monday through Friday and serves virtually 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The city PIO also participates in a bi-weekly JIC, or Joint Information Center, meeting with the state of Colorado, organized by the state of Colorado, that includes both the state government officials and local officials across the state of Colorado. They prepare communications daily for the EOC that are sent out to council. They are the primary conduit of information from Tri-County Health. And this gets into our communication strategy just briefly, but they have created two COVID-19 web pages, one for residents at c3gov.com/COVID-19. And we are funneling all relative information for residents to understand not only about city government, but how they can access resources to that webpage. It is our primary communications vehicle today. We're using social media to drive people to that page so that they can get the links and access the information that they need. Then we have the second page, which you're going to hear more about from Michelle Claymore in a few minutes, the COVID-19 webpage for local businesses. It is redefiningcommerce.com/biz-covid-19. By the way, both of these web pages are on a banner on our main page. So anyone who goes to our main page can click on those bright red banners and easily navigate to these two web pages. And I'll let Michelle tell you more about the SBA and PPA loan information, the PPP loans rather, that are on there for our restaurants, businesses, and retailers. From a social media standpoint, some interesting tidbits for you. We've had posts that have reached over 15,000 people. That's a 20% increase more than our daily reach of people. So a lot of people are turning to the city's Facebook page to find information during this period of time. And we also have grown in our Twitter posts and other social media outreach efforts. Channel 8, we've created COVID-19 content specifically for Channel 8 that's airing there. And we have figured out a way to broadcast these virtual meetings the city council's having now without having to have a staff member be on site. Our boards and commissions liaison provides updates via email on COVID-19 to all boards and commission members on a weekly basis. Our staff liaison is also scheduled check-in phone calls with senior and youth commission members. We are working on creating a grant process and criteria for application from local nonprofits who apply for the city for funds should funding become available to the city. The goal of this fund would be to provide funding that are seen for nonprofits seeing an increase in demand for services related to COVID-19. This is still in the draft process. Staff liaison is also coordinating a new timeline for QCF grants. As a result of this pandemic, we had to delay the QCF process. So grant awards have not been determined, nor have they been sent out to those who have applied for them. That has been communicated to everyone who has made a grant request through QCF. The chief mentioned the Memorial Day Parade. We also have postponed the Civics Academy that we had planned and start on April 1st. Leadership Commerce City and our activities related to that have been postponed. and our census hub scheduled for April 18th and May 9th have been canceled. We are currently working with Adams County to develop a new process for engaging the grant money that we talked to you about, using that grant money to be as effective as we can. Last Friday, the state of Colorado was at a 44% response rate, which was 4% above the nation's average with respect to responses for the US Census. That concludes my updates on government affairs and internal services. Thank you, Dylan.
Mr. Deputy City Manager Tinklenberg, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll start with the external departments, starting with community development. Overall, we've tried to maintain as many normal services as we can, given the circumstances. For an example, with building safety, they are accepting permit applications. There's been no drop-off in permit applications. For example, last year it was 277. This year in March, same month, 280. So actually 3 more than last year. We have a physical drop-off and pickup location, but most of them are being submitted electronically. And our plans reviewers are working remotely, and we have minimal permit tech staff in the office to transfer documents back and forth, and the permit technicians rotate through the office. In addition, we have suspended the actual inspections for existing properties, existing buildings, and the reason for that is it's not possible to maintain social distance inside an occupied home. So that's been a disappointment, I'm sure, to some people, but again, we just can't have staff going into an occupied home safely at this point. We are issuing temporary certificates of occupancy as well as permanent certificates of occupancy on a remote basis. And so we're able to continue that work. The planning division is still processing land use applications that were already submitted. We're also doing pre-application meetings with developers, as long as those can be done in an electronic or Zoom meeting format. And then some have requested deferral until we're able to sit down and talk face to face. And again, that's their choice. Development review is also doing existing land use applications, doing those reviews, again, working remotely. But again, new applications for land use are not being accepted at this point simply because of the safety factor involved with that. The staff has had limited conversations with developers in terms of submitting new applications. So we know there are some out there, but it'll just be a matter of time before we're able to take those in. And so staff is working on protocols that would make that possible in the future, but we're not there at this point yet. In terms of other developments that are underway, there is the potential need for a planning commission meeting in May for Legato. Again, we will have to see how that turns out and if that actually becomes a possibility. Neighborhood Services has been doing several things. One was they were in a support role for the police department in contacting all of the restaurants, bars, taverns, event centers, and gyms regarding the COVID-19 situation. And also the CDBG staff received a supplemental $246,000 from Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, CARES Act. So they're evaluating that right now to see what needs to be done in terms of handling that money. In terms of outreach, during the COVID-19 situation, Building Safety sent a letter out to all home builders, both single family and multifamily builders, in regards to operating, basically how they can operate while maintaining social distancing, that type of thing. They've also provided instructions and a hyperlink to the online building inspection form. Again, trying to facilitate them continuing to work, but doing so in a safe manner. Also, the Building Safety Division scheduled an operations open house with the home builder community. There was over 40 home builders, contractors, and trades personnel that attended the Zoom conference call to discuss operations and ask questions and receive feedback. In addition, staff has been collaborating with Adams County and the other jurisdictions that we partner with. For example, there's a Adams County Community Development Director Roundtable that they participated in. And we've had continuing interface with our referral agencies. That includes Fire District, the Water District, and Tri-County Health Department. They've also developed a process for the Fire District to use in posting dangerous / red tag situations. And then also staff is assisting with the Adams County Housing Stability Task Force. In terms of Parks, Recreation, Golf, they had to contact the 86 active adult participants that are regulars. So the staff called each one of them and to let them know of the situation, but also just to check in with them and see if their needs are being met. Staff will continue checking in with that group on a regular basis. There's also a bigger list of 300 participants that staff has reached out to as well. They're also going to be mailing out the April On the Move newsletter with information about the coronavirus. And that goes out, well, went out today, hopefully. So it's scheduled for today. And then they're also assisting with the Adams County Senior Services Task Force. The Golf Division, they've been working on maintenance projects. For example, they need to aerate the entire golf course, all the greens, tees, and fairways. They've been replacing broken sprinkler heads, painting, top dressing, trying to get some of those poor turf conditions turned around. So that's all spring maintenance work that has to happen before the golf course can really reopen. They have looked at what it would take to reopen, and according to their analysis, they believe it would take 5 to 7 days from us giving them the green light to when they would actually be able to reopen the golf course. And currently, we do not think that is something that can be done at this point, nor should be done for some time until the shelter-in-place order is lifted. In terms of the Bison Ridge and Eagle Point Recreation Centers, the staff had to suspend over 20,000 memberships. Those are Play Pass, ID cards, annuals, monthly, punch cards, all of that type of thing. So over 20,000. There are also over 900 annual membership plans that have been suspended. And what we mean by suspended, it doesn't count towards their use during these months of closure. So that would provide them with additional months of use once we do reopen. In addition, all the programs and rentals at both facilities have been canceled through May 4. I'm just giving you highlights here, trying to cut this down a little bit. They've also processed over $55,000 worth of checks, credit card, and account refunds through the end of March. Again, people have the choice of either rolling their membership over extending it or getting a refund if they wish. Moving on, Parks Planning is still involved with monitoring the progress on Veterans Memorial Park work. Also, we have been working with the state personnel on the natural resources damages project. We are resubmitting the proposal. They asked for additional information. So that work continues, as well as doing referrals from planning on reviewing projects. Gymnastics and dance. They have been contacting the 728 dance and gymnast participants. They've coordinated video connection sessions for their competitive gymnasts through Zoom, and have been getting good feedback from parents on that. They've been sending out home workouts to try to keep the gymnasts in good physical condition. Also, Aquatics has been contacting their Learn to Swim patrons, and also contacting all of the birthday party rentals, extending that or providing refunds. And then staff has been working with a good portion of the full-time recreational staff in making sure that they're certified for CPR and first aid. Fitness and wellness, again, providing information to the patrons and providing Wellbeats accessibility for participants from their homes, as well as posting regular workout sessions so that people can check those out. They've also canceled the spring sports, volleyball and soccer, which had over 220 participants. And then youth and teens, again, working with the teens and also trying to assist the community with help of emergency funds from their grant program. And again, canceling programs like the chief mentioned, police camp, for an example. Moving on to parks operations. They do snow removal as needed, and we've had several snowstorms. They're doing pothole patching, dealing with CRM issues, and doing inspections and routine maintenance, crack sealing, and then traffic signs where those are damaged or missing or knocked over. Again, they respond to that to maintain safety for traffic conditions. They're doing street sweeping and other repairs as needed. In the parks crew operation, again, snow removal, unlocking and servicing restrooms. They have to unlock those in the morning and lock them up at night. Otherwise, people have had a tendency to try to sleep in them overnight or damage them. And so, again, trying to keep them operational and sanitary for users. Again, they're doing maintenance work, weed control, and starting mowing operations, as well as doing utility locates. Pardon me. Public Works Engineering, they're doing development review, again, of development projects that have been submitted previously. They're all working remotely. And then they are also working on process improvement, and community development planners are doing that as well, evaluating our current processes and seeing if there's ways that we can improve the flow of work and efficiency. Project design, the engineers are also working remotely to the extent that they can. Occasionally they have to come into the office, but primarily remotely. And they're continuing work on capital projects. For an example, the pavement management program will be ready here shortly for taking that out to bid. And then there was a question about status on traffic signals. 104th and Revere Street, that work is anticipated to be done by April 10. But again, the power is a separate story because that equipment is back ordered and won't be coming in as quickly as the rest of the work will be done. And so we don't anticipate that power to be hooked up until April 20 or thereabouts, towards the end of the month. 104th and Florence, mast arm is up, and they're upgrading the signal heads and adding new detection technology. There again, the power problem is with the power supply. It's on back order, and it'll be some time, approximately a month before that comes in. 104th and Joliet, the caissons are in, and they'll be placing the signal poles and mast arms at the end of this week. Again, they're same situation. The signal won't be able to be turned on until the power supply arrives. And then E470 and 120th, as well as the one at 104th and Peoria. That is in the process where they're asking the signal pole mast arm manufacturing for price proposals. And they anticipated getting those price proposals back by April 9, but then it's possibly 5 months before the steel, those poles and arms will actually be delivered. So some time out on that. In terms of 112th Avenue project, that's a project that's being managed by the Reunion Metro District, and we are a contributor to it. That project is proceeding. There were some concerns from neighbors in that area, and those concerns have been addressed. For example, two of the parties thought that we were going to be moving their fence that was on their property, and it turns out that their fence was placed in the right of way and it had to be moved back to their property line. So, you know, there's just miscellaneous small issues like that. And those have all been addressed. And so far, from what we can tell, all of that has been worked out amicably. That's the end of my report. So I will move on to capital improvement projects. I just sent that report out earlier today. You know, projects are moving along, and so I don't anticipate that there's anything unique or unusual that you would see on that report. But like I said, the capital projects are proceeding, and you know, they're either in design phase or the projects that are actively in construction are being managed. With that, I'll turn it back over to City Manager.
City Manager McBroom, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Roger, Troy, and Chief. We just have one more staff update, a brief update from Michelle Claymore, and then we'll be happy to answer council questions before we move on with the rest of the agenda.
Economic Development Director Claymore, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening. So I was asked to give a brief update about what we are doing to help small businesses. The COVID-19 situation really came upon us very quickly, and we tried to react just as quickly, beginning with communication and information sharing activities. For a little bit of context, the city closed public access to city buildings on March 12th, and this included the Small Business Resource Center. On March 16th, the first order was given to shut down bars and restaurant dining rooms. And by March 17th, we had both websites, both residential and the business website up and running to start sharing information out outside. On March 17th, we also hosted a conference call with all the partners of the Small Business Resource Center. This included folks from the Colorado Minority Business Office, Metro North Small Business Development Center, Adelante, and the Commerce City Chamber of Commerce. And really, the goal of the meeting was to start talking about working together by all sharing the same information and key messages to the business community, so that no matter which organization was initially contacted by a business, we were all giving them the same information. In support of the city's restaurants and bars affected by that first state order closure, the chief has already talked about the great work that was done between the police department, neighborhood services, and economic development to really start getting information out to those business owners about what the closure meant, what they couldn't do, and the fact that there were resources being posted for their use. By March 24th, Neighborhood Services had contacted 97 small businesses with a flyer with that information. In the meantime, the economic development team researched which restaurants were going to stay open and offer drive-through, curbside pickup, or delivery options to customers. We then published that list on the COVID-19 business website pages so that our residents could use the list to help support these businesses. I'd really like to thank the council members that helped promote the list by sending it out to your social media followers. The Commerce City Chamber of Commerce and Oakwood Homes also promoted it to their members, residents, and contacts. On March 19th, a new state health order was issued closing all the hair, nail, and massage operations. My team reached out to 35 businesses throughout the city with the same kind of information that was on the flyer, offering the website link for information and offering us up as a resource if they needed anything. And then March 25th came the stay in place executive order to close all non-essential businesses. This created a lot of confusion about which businesses had to close and which ones could stay open. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment issued another public health order the following day clarifying which businesses are considered essential. Now, a few of our businesses in Commerce City reached out to us wondering if they were considered essential, and we were able to use this order to help determine that they were. The order also talks about any business staying open is still required to follow the guideline for social distancing. We have this order posted on the COVID-19 business web pages as a reference for businesses. We are also sharing information through our social media, and anyone can follow the economic development folks on the Twitter account at the handle Commerce City ED. Other communication and information sharing activities includes working with our partners at the county and throughout the state to stay as informed as possible so that we can keep passing along valuable information to the business community. Adams County has created several task forces in response to the situation. The ED division is active on one of those groups called the Business Support Response and Recovery Team. We're also helping to promote a county-wide business survey that was developed by Adams County Economic Development. The survey closed on Friday, but once the information is tabulated, those results will better inform all of us on specific issues that small businesses are facing due to the COVID-19 situation. Just as a fact, the survey was offered in both Spanish and English. Another activity that the ED division is working on is identifying and sharing all of the financial resources that are being developed at the federal, state, and local levels to help small businesses that have very little or no revenue coming in during this time. There has been a lot of discussion about small businesses needing financial resources for short-term working capital. This working capital is needed for small business owners to keep employees on the payroll, pay for employee sick leave, make mortgage or rent payments, utility payments, cover tax bills, and pay for product inventories and other debts. We're also hearing that some businesses are experiencing increased production costs due to the supply chain disruptions. As a first step, we encourage any business not able to make any of these kinds of payments to immediately contact your landlords, your lenders, utility providers, and local taxing entities. Most of these organizations will work with businesses on new payment schedules, but only if business owners contact them directly. In addition, there are now new financial tools available through the 3 federal aid packages recently passed by Congress. Understanding exactly how programs within these new packages can help small businesses has been a little challenging, and in some cases, the guidelines aren't published yet. We have posted information as we get them from reliable sources about the programs on the COVID-19 business page. There are 4 main SBA programs that have opened up: the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the Paycheck Protection Loan Program, the Small Business Debt Relief Program, and the Express Bridge Loan Pilot Program. Sometimes you can apply for more than one of those programs. Other times, if you apply for one, it precludes you from applying for others. Because of the complexity of these programs rolling out, the state has set up a Colorado Small Business COVID-19 Disaster Response Hotline. 303-860-5881 is that number. What they have done is taken all the Small Business Development Center counselors to staff that hotline, so that if a business wants more information about which program would best fit their needs, they can call that number and somebody will walk through their situation and direct them into the right area. I'd also like to share that when the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program first started taking applications, it was the first one to come online. There were so many applications coming in that the SBA website taking those applications crashed, losing some of the small business loan applications in the process. We are being told that the small businesses that completed their application and successfully uploaded it to the SBA site should have a control number. Businesses can check on their loan status using that control number. But if a business did not receive a control number, there's a good chance their application was lost during the crash and they should apply again. The other thing that we are hearing is a lot of our Spanish-speaking small business owners are very confused about these programs. So we are developing 2 small business webinars highlighting these loan programs, and we're trying to get somebody from the SBA to come in and share information. We're going to host one in English and one in Spanish, but we're really focused on the Spanish-speaking one because there haven't been too many of these webinars that are held in Spanish. The ones that have interpreters, there's still a lot of confusion because some of the interpretation is not giving accurate information back to our Spanish-speaking business owners. So we're going to work on that and hopefully roll that out in the next couple weeks. There's also need for a lot more capital. Other groups are considering creating loan programs. We've been working with the Colorado Enterprise Fund, or CEF, to develop a Commerce City revolving loan fund as part of the 2020 work plan. City Council set aside $200,000 to help seed the program, and CEF was going to do a dollar-for-dollar match, initially creating a $400,000 program. Unfortunately, CEF recently informed us that they no longer have the capital to offer the dollar-for-dollar match. What they can do is contribute 10% at this time. They propose that the city's $200,000 seed funding and their 10% addition could establish a $220,000 COVID relief fund for Commerce City businesses. We could offer loans of up to $25,000 with quick turnaround on applications at a 5% interest rate for a 5 to 6 year term, and potentially look at doing 6 months of interest-only payments as a way to help. At the same time that we were working with CEF on this, Adams County, who has an existing $2 million revolving loan fund with CEF, is considering expanding their program with the goal of raising another $3 million and rebranding the program in response to the COVID-19. The county has asked each of the cities to participate in this fund. Staff supports the proposed collaboration with the county, but wants to make sure that the capital set aside in the budget would actually be lent to Commerce City small businesses. CEF indicated that if we set up our program for $220,000, the money would be guaranteed to be lent to small businesses in Commerce City, but the program could fall under the umbrella of the county's program. Details for both programs need to be fleshed out a little bit, but if City Council is comfortable moving forward with the general concept of what I just presented, we could get the $220,000 fund established fairly quickly to help meet the current capital demand, and then work towards moving the program under the umbrella of the county program once they have their details worked out. I'd like to turn it back over to City Manager McBroom for discussion by council on this proposal.
City Manager McBroom, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Michelle, and the other staff for providing updates. It was a lot to cover. I apologize for that. Before moving on to question and answer, we did want to ask City Council if they're comfortable taking an action on the $200,000 that is currently budgeted for our revolving loan fund program, and see if council is willing to take an action tonight to repurpose that money for a loan program specifically related to COVID-19 issues. So our suggestion would be to take part in the county broader loan program with the understanding that CEF would loan the city's $220,000 to Commerce City businesses. So by being part of the county loan program, takes some of the responsibility off of us to administer the loan program. And at this point, even without all of the details of the county's program, it seems to make the most sense to us. We're happy to answer any questions about the loan program. I would suggest maybe we resolve the loan program question first and then go on to any other questions council members have about our COVID-19 updates.
Councilman Erst.
So I understand the 10% is probably maxed at 20,000. Can we increase it from the city side out of our general fund and possibly make it higher than 200,000?
Of course, that would take a different council action. Council would have to, with an ordinance, reappropriate money. The $200,000 is does not require a reappropriation ordinance because of how it was listed in the budget. I would not recommend dedicating more money towards that program until we get more revenue information later in the month.
So can I just ask that included in the revenue projections and what we're getting the information on to see, because I know we have to wait for March's numbers to get processed. But can we come up with a plan to make that 500,000? Obviously, we need discussion amongst the rest of the council members. 500,000 is the first number I'm throwing out. It could be higher, it could be lower. I would like us to have a good discussion about that. But I think we all understand that the intent of the 200,000 was to help businesses be successful in Commerce City. Small businesses, whether they're transitioning from their basement to a storefront or trying to grow from a storefront into something larger. That was the intent to help. There's no better time for us to be helping small businesses in our city. And so taking the strategy of the original intent of that loan, I would really support increasing that number to a number that we can all get comfortable behind.
To put it in perspective, Brighton has put $400,000 on the table. Councilwoman Noble.
Could you say that again, Ben?
Brighton has put $400,000 on the table for a similar program.
How much on the table?
400.
Okay. So I think that since there is a survey out in order to find out what the businesses actually need, and there's going to be results from that in the next few days. And we just heard that we're going to have a shortfall, perhaps of 25 to 30% ourselves. I wonder if it would be worthwhile to review. We know we have the 200,000 and we know that we have the other 20,000, but to review the additional amount at another meeting. And I do personally feel that we need to be meeting more frequently. We're not meeting enough. We need to get back on our every Monday schedule. There's no reason that we're not doing that. It also seemed to me that there are meetings that are taking place, phone meetings that apply to each of the committees that we're assigned to. And we could participate in those meetings as well, because we are the forward-facing group for the city and liaisons with the constituents. And I'm just concerned that we're not getting all of those T's crossed and I's dotted. The staff is doing a fantastic job, no question about that. And I really do appreciate that. It is an incredible time that we're going through on so many levels. But I have 4 pages of notes just from what I just listened to of questions that I want to ask, not to mention constituents who have reached out to me with questions they have that weren't addressed during this portion. And we haven't even gotten to the rest of the meeting. So going back to what was suggested, I really think it's a wonderful idea. If we can come up with 500,000, that would be terrific. On the other hand, how do we know that in a Zoom meeting? And secondly, I think that we need to start meeting more often, even if it's under these strange circumstances of doing Zoom meetings. And thirdly, when we had the discussion about whatever rules we're going to be applying as we went to no meetings, but instead doing these kinds of meetings, I was very clear that I wanted residents to be able to weigh in and make comment or ask questions. And this is all very one way. And I would like to be able to set up a system where residents can participate the same way they would in a city council meeting, even if it's just in written comment. I was part of a CDPHE meeting today, and there was a lot of written comment that they were addressing. So I think there's a way to do that too. I covered a lot of things. Sorry about that. I still have 4 pages.
So in response to your comments regarding meetings, we do later in the agenda have a conversation directly related to that and figuring out how we move forward with meetings, so we can address that at that point. Do you want to, right now we are on the subject of the loan fund thing. So I want to circle back with you afterwards to address some of the questions that you wrote down in your 4 pages, as well as some of the other concerns that you have. So let's close up on this loan thing first and then circle back to that conversation if you're okay with that.
I need you to sit closer to your screen, Ben.
How's that? Can you hear that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I just turned my microphone up.
Thank you.
As I was saying, the later in the agenda, we have a conversation on future meetings. So let's address that at that time whenever that comes up.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
The 4 pages of questions that you have, I'm interested in hearing some of those questions, but let's focus right now on the loan program and focus and close that out before we circle back to those questions that you have. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Councilman Madera?
Yeah, just going back to the loan program, I think obviously the 220,000 is more of a starting place, and we can always add additional funds as needed. But at this point, I think we're kind of getting the cart ahead of the horse, where we're not even into that recovery phase yet. We're still, on the initial response to let's just get through the pandemic and make sure that people are safe and surviving, first and foremost. And so I think the 220, it probably won't cover what we need, but I think we need a little bit more information to get an accurate number, because I think at this point everyone is just throwing out numbers without any kind of support or real knowledge of the extent of the need. And the budget's going to be thrown off by quite a bit, I think, in terms of revenues and just the programs that we've already budgeted for. So I think we're going to need a more comprehensive look into what are our revenues, what do we have planned to spend that we're going to have to cut, and where are we going to pull these funds for these other programs. So I think we should start at the 220 and then compile some information and then come back and add additional funds, where we think we have a solid number.
Thank you, Councilman Wadiola.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm with Councilman Madera. I think we need to roll out the 220 as soon as we can, since it's already budgeted, and then at least wait for the March numbers that finance is doing to look at upping it. I do believe that we do have to increase it. But I think the 220 is a good start for right now. And then maybe when we get our March numbers, we look at that and go up from there.
Councilwoman Grimes?
I would also echo Councilman Madera and Guardiola. I like the 220 as a starting point, knowing that we need more, but need to kind of evaluate revenues first and need as well.
Councilwoman Allen Thomas?
Yes, I was just going to say I agree with the 220 as well.
Well, it sounds like most everybody is in favor of that. To take action, we will need a motion. Councilman Madera?
Move to approve the use of the previously appropriated contingency funds for a local revolving loan fund.
I have a motion to approve the use of previously appropriated contingency funds for local revolving loan fund for participation in the county loan fund. Is that correct? Great. Councilwoman Noble?
I second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the use of previously appropriated contingency funds for local revolving loan fund for participation in county loan fund. Any discussion at this point? We will take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Madera.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Noble.
Yes.
Councilmember Guardiola.
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank.
Yes.
Mayor Huesman.
Yes.
Passes unanimously 9-0.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to circle back to Councilwoman Noble. You had some questions that you wanted specifically answered. You want to go ahead and shoot those questions off and get answers from the city staff?
Councilmember Noble, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the change in the recreation fees. I appreciate that very much. Did I hear that there would be no late fees until June 10th on county property taxes?
The city does not collect county property taxes.
Yes, I know,
As
but I
as
thought
you
I
recall,
heard someone
we
say
sent,
that.
we did send a letter to the county. I'm going to put it back to staff. Was that Troy Smith? Did you have an update on the county property tax deadline?
No, I didn't speak to county property taxes, and I'm unaware of what the county's position is. The state is contemplating some tax payment deferments for statutory cities and for state taxes, and more information will be coming to us on that this week.
It would be good to circle back with the county and see what, if anything, they're planning. And then Roger said something about natural resource district. What did he say about that?
We have a grant program that we participated in several years back, and it was for reestablishing habitat along Second Creek, north of 112th Avenue. And because of the length of time, the state asked for additional information. And so we are working with the state staff who basically administer that natural resources damages fund. And we're submitting additional information to them.
Okay, and then while I have you here, Roger, I have a question about 4 different projects. First one is the stop sign at on Landmark. I know there's very little traffic right now, but I would just like to be able to inform constituents who had put out those requests before these the health crisis occurred. And do we have an update on that at all?
I don't on that specific project, but we can get that to you.
Okay. The speeding at the entrance into South Lawn, there was going to be a some sort of work done there also. I assume that that's been postponed because of lack of vehicles. Or at least we're way down on vehicles, that's for sure.
We will need to get information on that for you.
Okay.
I don't have that.
Good. Then also, it appears that there's a sign that's gone up for a gas station at 104th and Highway 2. Is that correct? And does that overlap with the Antelope pad at all?
Not that I'm aware of, but again, I don't have any information about that specific project, so we can get that to you.
Okay, and then the final one on projects is about the 104th, the new traffic light at 104th. And I had noticed this too, that the traffic light is for trucks coming in and out of a facility or some road or something, some small road. But there is not a traffic light at 104th and Peoria, where lots of people are trying to get onto 104th, make a left onto 104th, go east from Peoria. And I am interested in knowing whether there's going to be a light at 104th and Peoria, and if not, why the location for the light was chosen, why that location was chosen.
The developer in that case had to install the traffic signal because of the truck traffic. The one for Peoria is in the plan and has been designed.
So it had something to do with a developer, you're saying?
The facility that went in causes a lot of truck traffic, and so they had to pay for the traffic signal. That's why that one was installed. They paid for it. The one at Peoria is in our plan, and that one is designed.
Okay.
And I should add, if I could add, the traffic signal at 104th and Peoria, it's in the pipeline. It's been designed. Construction's been budgeted. It could be completed by the end of this year, but it may not be completed until sometime into 2021.
Okay, that's good. And I guess that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Councilman Guardiola?
Yes, thank you. Could I, City Manager, could you send out the answers to the questions we asked to everyone so we could all be informed? Because I got a couple questions that Susan went over. Is that possible?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Madera?
Yeah, so I'm just going to circle back to the COVID-19 discussion. So there was a question earlier about people serving on task force, and I believe one of them was in reference to me. So I've been calling into the Senior Services Task Force from the county, and the Commissioner, Steve O'Dorisio, asked me to be on that task force. And so that's why I've been participating on that. It wasn't anything where I actively seeked it or, anything of the sort, but I think it's open. I can forward the invite to those members that are on the senior commission. It's more of a fact gathering and learning what the needs and resources are and trying to make those connections between the county, the resources out there for seniors and the different cities. So, I mean, it's been a lot of fact finding and just trying to gather those resources together and match them up with the needs. I know our city's staff has been doing a great job of reaching out to our seniors that participate in the various programs that we offer here at the city level. and, just checking in, seeing how they're doing, seeing if they have any needs and how we can be of assistance. And so, I can extend that out there because it was a task force and I was invited to it. I didn't, run it by the county because we don't, or by the council, because we don't make any decisions or anything of that sort.
So now that we're at this point, this is something actually that's kind of frustrating to me because the county has established numerous response and recovery teams. These response and recovery teams are over multiple different subjects, and I don't really feel that we as a city were aware that this was taking place or that there was an opportunity for participation. There's a website here. If you go to adamscountycovid19.org and just go to that, and it'll take you to the basic site, which will then have a link for these response and recovery teams. I know that some of you are very passionate about some of these topics, from business support to childcare, food security, basic essentials, housing stability, senior services, support for the unemployed and future workforce, and uninsured, and healthcare access. Each one of these links will take you to the different response and recovery team, give you a little bit more explanation. You can see down here. So each of the county commissioners is either chairing one of these teams or is sometimes just co-chairing or helping out another one out there. But there is an opportunity here for every one of you, if you want to be involved in this, to get involved. Friday morning, I had a Zoom meeting with Commissioner Pinter, who's the chair of the Board of Commissioners, and explained my frustration that this information wasn't flowing out, especially whenever I see that there are council members from other cities that are participating on these things, and the information was never flowing to us to say, here's opportunities for you to get involved at the county level and help them and represent the city. We have city staff that is participating in some of these response and recovery teams, and yet once again we are just left completely out of the mix. So that was rather disconcerting to myself. So the website again, go to adamscountycovid19.org, and you'll be able to look at what is going on there. Any questions on that? I got to figure out where my Zoom went so I can get out of this sharing my screen.
Just one question, Mayor. Does the city council wish to appoint council members to these, or should it just be council members self-selecting?
I personally believe that it should be self-selected. If it's something you want to be involved in, it shouldn't be something that, we choose who gets to go be involved and who doesn't. Like I said, my point to the commissioner was that we have people who are passionate about some of these subjects. And I know that we have some council members that would love to be involved in this and take part. We just weren't informed that they existed. And that's very, very frustrating to me that took place. So again, the website is out there. Whenever you go and you click on each individual one, you'll see who that chair is of it. Feel free to contact the chair and say you'd like to be involved and go out there and do that. Any questions on that one? You guys don't see my screen anymore, right?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Councilwoman Noble?
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for Mayor Huseman. Sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out to us. I think that's really helpful because I would like to participate. So I'll look at some of those and see how I can be of help since I'm on the Adams County I'm appointed to the Adams County Economic Development, appointed to the Senior Commission, that kind of thing. And I've been very involved with Daniela in making sure that members of the Senior Commission and seniors in Commerce City are getting information. So they received a really nice flyer from the city and translated in Spanish also in the past couple of weeks. So that was great. I'm wondering what kind of traffic, if you're tracking the kind of traffic that you're getting on the website as opposed to Facebook. And secondly, I had asked about, because I learned of it through the county, what's called JIS email list. And I was offered to be part of that email list by the county, and it kind of got messed up and it hasn't really happened. but I wondered if anyone else wanted it. They said you'd get a lot of information, and I'm the kind of person who likes information, and I'd like to be able to impart information too. I think it's really important that we get as much out to our residents as possible so that they don't have to look up information, that we know that we're actually sending out current and updated information at all times. So that was 3 things: traffic on the website,
and when you
the JIS emails.
Right, when you say website, you're referring to our city website, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Because I know there's a lot of information on the website, but are people actually going to the website?
Before I let City Manager McBroom chime in, I just want to say that I did mention to Commissioner Pinner that you would probably want to be involved in the senior services one, and I thought that specifically that you would be one that jumped on that. So that being said, City Manager McBroom, if you want to answer those 3 questions for Councilwoman Noble.
We can absolutely generate some traffic data on our Facebook and Twitter feed. Troy alluded to that. We can also share some traffic on our 2 websites. It's certainly something Jody and her team are actively managing. A little bit more detail about what Ms. Noble was referring to. Tri-County Health has developed, I think they've always had a mailing list of primarily PIOs for each organization, all the government agencies that Tri-County Health serves in the Tri-County areas of Douglas, Arapahoe, and Adams County. So Jody Hardy had been receiving those emails. Councilwoman Noble had asked to be added to Tri-County's email distribution list directly, and Tri-County Health was fine with that. You might notice Jody Hardy has started sending those emails out to City Council starting last week when she receives them. Generally, it's public information, press releases, other public announcements that Tri-County Health might make. If other council members would like to receive those directly from Tri-County Health, you can send either Jody or I a message, and we'll work with Tri-County to get you added to their email list. Did I answer your 3 questions, Councilwoman Noble? Is there a 3rd one I missed?
Yes, if anyone wants to receive those as well, I do, and I'm not receiving them yet. So I hope that can begin soon. And some sort of weekly summary. I'm concerned about how people get information and whether they're getting information. We should be able to have a way of getting more of this out to folks. We get a daily update, of course, and I really appreciate that, but I can't tell from looking at it which part is public and which part isn't, or is everything public? Could I just copy and paste the whole thing? I don't know.
So you raised some great questions or some great comments, especially regarding the information that's going out. When we first started on this, I was trying to share as much information as possible, but then reached a point where I was questioning the validity of the data that was coming from Tri-County Health. We, for a long time, were staying at 2 cases. And during that time period, we were staying at 2 cases, even though one of our supposed confirmed cases was no longer confirmed. And yet those numbers stayed at 2 for the entire time. I even emailed back to Tri-County Health and said, how can I trust your numbers whenever these things are taking place? And we don't know if these numbers are accurate. So it's one of the challenges of the data that you're getting either from Tri-County Health or from CDHE. Sometimes they're conflicting. Sometimes that data is sent over and Adams County is sending out, and it's conflicting with the data that we're getting from the city level. So that is frustrating. I will tell you that I think that Denver has been a model of sharing information. I get 2 emails from them every day that basically explains very well what the situation is in the city and county of Denver. I'll show you here in a second. I'm going to share my screen again so you can see that. Here you go. Here's a end of day report that I received from the city and county of Denver. It basically breaks down all the cases in the world across the US, what's going on in Colorado and what's going on specifically in Denver, what they have. talks about how much money they're spending on the response to it, talks about how many people are actually in their jail and who's actually being released from the jail. And these come twice a day. I get one in the morning to start the day, and I get one in the evening to finish the day. This is great information. I agree, one of the frustrations that I have is the report that we're getting is not telling me anything. Yeah, I mean, every line item on there says we're working on something, we're working on this, we're working on that. And it's just not informative, which is why I requested that we have this meeting and go through and get the information we have. And I do appreciate the fact that everybody took the time to go through and talk about what the different city services are doing, what the different departments are doing. One of my concerns is most everything that we heard is what the city is doing for the city. What I didn't hear a lot of is what is the city doing for the residents of Commerce City? You know, where's our senior outreach? What are we doing to make sure that the senior citizens are being taken care of and that they have access to the supplies they need? When I look at the city of North Glen has started a program where if a senior citizen needs a prescription picked up, the police department goes and picks up the prescription and delivers it to the senior citizen so they don't have to come out there. I see programs like that taking place all throughout our area. And then whenever I ask, what are we doing as a city? I get this many people are working, this many people are doing this. And I'm not seeing the same level of engagement from our city staff to take care of the residents of Commerce City as I am other cities. And while I greatly appreciate every report that was given tonight, 99% of that was focused entirely on what is the city doing to take care of the city government of Commerce City and not on what are we doing to take care of the residents. I would like to, and Councilwoman Allen Thomas, I see your hand up there. I'd like to make a motion that if we have a non-essential business that has been shut down because of the public health orders, that they are not required to pay use tax on their, that they would normally have to pay for the time that they're shut down. You know, it's not sales tax, you know, so it's not, you know, they're not having to pass money from the consumer on, but actual use tax that these small businesses in our community have to pay. They're still on the hook to pay for that because it's their property that they have to pay for regardless. And that's not fair to expect them to have to pay taxes whenever they're not able to open their doors and actually provide service and generate revenue that would cover those taxes. So I'd like to make a motion that we don't charge those use taxes for any business that was deemed non-essential and can't generate revenue during this time. So Councilwoman Allen Thomas.
Oops. Yeah, I just wanted to add also though on a note, since my ride around with the city manager, Brian, I've been updating him and daily, and I will say at least in my ward, I've seen significant improvements. I want to tell him thank you and the staff because things that I have complained about, I've seen addressed, such as the potholes in my ward, that type of stuff. So I have seen, like I said, a lot of improvements on the trailer cleanup, that type of stuff. So I did want to tell Brian thank you, and for the presentation tonight from the other staff as well.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Thank you. Just to respond to the motion that the mayor made, and just procedurally, that would have to be accomplished by an ordinance, given the way that our sales and use tax code is set up. There may be implications for bond covenants as well. If you wanted to modify that to have it be for staff to bring back an ordinance granting an exemption of some kind, that is something that could be done. But it would not be done tonight unless we tried to draft it kind of on the fly as an emergency ordinance.
I'm good with modifying that to be drafted up as an ordinance for that. Again, for any small business that is deemed a non-essential and cannot generate revenue during this time, the ability for them to not have to pay that use tax. Councilman Hurst.
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Before I go to conversation, I have both deputy city managers want to chime in. So Deputy City Manager Smith.
Deputy City Manager Smith, you're unmuted.
Thank you. My comment was not about taxes. My comment was back to the email listserv. It's my understanding that we were not putting council members on Tri-County's email listserv. And that's why Jody's sending that out to the entire council now. So Jody gets many, many more communications from Tri-County, as do all the PIOs through that listserv. And this one particular document is one that we're extending to the council with their permission, is my understanding.
Thank you. Deputy City Manager Tinklenberg.
Just a clarification, use tax is paid by a business when they purchase equipment. Is that what you intend with that motion?
What taxes are charged on an existing business? So let's take, for instance, a dentist office that cannot operate. What taxes are charged on that dentist office?
There would not be any taxes from the city.
I speak to a dentist all the time who's telling me that he wants to leave Commerce City because the sales and use taxes are squeezing him to death. So where is the fine line in here to be able to provide some relief from a non-essential business that is not able to generate revenue at this time?
Again, his taxes would only be due on materials he uses in his operation. So if he's not open, there would not be a tax that would be due. That's why I'm asking, what is intended?
Right. Well, like I said, what I'm trying to do is minimize the tax burden on a non-essential business so that they're not having to pay taxes in whenever they're not able to generate revenue. Councilwoman Noble.
I asked this similarly 2 weeks ago, or whenever we had our last meeting, is to find some way to provide relief to residents and commercial. So I think that's very important, but what are the taxes that the city, or fees that the city takes monthly from businesses? And could you speak into your mic, more directly into your computer when you reply?
There are no taxes that are generated except when they make sales or they purchase product to use in their operation, in their internal operation. So again, they would have to be selling something to generate a tax. We don't have any tax that's just due simply because they're open for business.
So the dentist that Ben is, that Mayor Huesman is, sorry, it looks more familiar on a Zoom thing. It reminds me of the birthday I had for my husband last week. Anyway, sorry. So if the dentist thinks that he's paying use tax, is it because he's buying new equipment that he has to pay the use tax on, or does he pay use tax on that monthly for the equipment?
No, it's only when they purchase new equipment that use tax is due. If they buy material to use in the process of operating their business, unless it goes out the door and a sales tax is applied, if they use it internally, then a use tax would be due. So again, there shouldn't be a tax that is being imposed on any business if they're not operating, not generating money.
Okay, so there's nothing, you're saying nothing that they would be spending money on while a non-essential business is not in operation, other than their staff and their rent?
Well, only if they were doing renovations to their building or buying new equipment, something of that nature, would any tax be due. So if they simply are not operating, there's no tax that's due to the city at that point.
Thank you.
I might add, that's why we're expecting that our revenue will take a hit. The assumption is that if businesses are not operating, they will not be generating sales or use tax. If council decides to pass the motion, we can certainly do some additional research as part of putting a motion together. If that's true, another way of looking at it is adopting the ordinance would not have much of an effect on our revenue, because those businesses, if they close, wouldn't be generating revenue anyway. So we don't necessarily have to answer that conclusively tonight. If the motion passes, we'll do that research as part of drafting an ordinance.
So, give me 1 second here to drop this out. This right here is a tax bill for Starbucks on 104th and Tower. This is not their property tax bill, but this is their use tax bill. So how are they paying these taxes in for the equipment, furnishings, merchandise right here?
This looks to be an Adams County tax bill as opposed to a Commerce City tax bill. It could also be for taxes that were incurred before they closed.
$127 of that comes to Commerce City.
So this looks like, Roger, is this a property tax bill?
This is not their property tax bill. This is entirely on commercial equipment, furnishings, and merchandise. This is their tax bill right here.
Right, that's the personal property portion of the total property tax. So for any business, they pay on their real property and then also personal property. And that is basically set by the state. And there's been debate at the state legislature in years past, I know, about exempting personal property because personal property is the equipment that a business purchases to operate. So
for a dentist who has dental chairs, who has vacuum pumps, who has drills, and all the assorted torture equipment that a dentist puts in your mouth, he's paying taxes on that, and those taxes are being remitted to Commerce City. My goal is during the time when he is deemed non-essential and not able to generate revenue, that he would not have to pay the taxes on that equipment because he has no way of generating revenue in order to come up and pay that bill.
I would suggest, I'm sorry, I would suggest then, I think what we're talking about is personal property tax as part of the property tax bill. So I would suggest modifying the motion to speak directly to property tax, the personal property tax that's paid as part of their property tax bill. I don't know much about the city's authority to waive personal property tax. I don't know if Roger or Robert does.
Mr. Sheasley?
I do not know much about it. I was just going to make the same clarifying point that Mr. McBroom did.
Okay. Mr. Madera?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to, my understanding of use tax is how Roger was explaining it, where, it's for purchases made to be used in the business. So the business isn't operating and they're not incurring those costs, and they wouldn't be taxed on that. So maybe instead of making a motion for use tax, perhaps having more of a exploratory type motion to see where we can provide relief. Maybe it's for use taxes that they had already incurred previously, and how businesses might be using revenues that they're incurring now to pay prior use taxes. So maybe it'd be more of a timing issue where we can give them an extension on some of those. But I think if we can amend the motion to be more exploratory and how we can provide relief, tax relief for businesses specifically, that might be a better way to go for this.
All right. Councilman Guardiola?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say if we could get our tax expert to really focus on this, since I think there's a lot of disagreements on what taxes are getting paid, on which items. So I would definitely see if we could amend the motion to explore and bring the tax experts to see, because we want to alleviate that. If this dentist is getting taxed while he's not in service, that's not right. And any other businesses, but I would want to be definite that these are actual taxes coming out and not going to the county, or just the tax expert, I would say, in our financial department to really let us know what taxes are coming to the city.
All right, thank you. So I will amend that motion to make it so that we explore the ability to provide tax relief in that category. Councilman Hurst, you seconded that motion. Are you good with the amendment?
Yes, I support the amendment.
All right. Any other discussion on that before we vote? Take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Madera,
Yes.
Councilmember Alan Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Noble,
Yes.
Councilmember Guardiola,
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank,
Yes.
Mayor Huseman.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion on the city's response to COVID-19 before we move on to the next agenda item? Councilman Hurst?
Yes, I appreciate the update from the city. Even my family has seen some of the response. My children in classes at Bison Ridge, and those have been changed and refunded or moved out to the next. So I appreciate that response. Seem to happen pretty seamlessly. One thing I would just request, Mayor Huseman brought up the county and how we can kind of have some input there and help the recovery and try to on items that we're passionate about. But if you hear of any other opportunities such as the food banks, I know food banks rely heavily on senior citizens or retired folks to volunteer hours at the food bank, and obviously the best time for those into volunteering because they're a bit higher risk for contracting the virus. So if you hear as a city, as emergency services, of opportunities that we can safely volunteer time and services, I'd be the first to volunteer. I'm healthy, but obviously there's some precautions that can be taken during volunteering. Working with the state, we worked with CDPHE on several different tasks that we had to get done, but make sure that we're practicing appropriate social distancing and appropriate PPE is being taken care of. And so that would be really my request, is because a lot of us are kind of stuck at home wondering how we can help, trying to live normal lives, but at the same time, if we're not connected in the same way as we usually are, it sometimes we feel helpless. When we're pretty used to trying to work out and solve problems, and in this moment, I kind of feel like I'm just kind of grasping for things to try to help with, but also be safe and keep my social distance. So I don't care if it's you need a hall monitor for the open space because there's about 700 times more people out there right now than normal. Just however we can help out. I would be more than willing to hear some suggestions.
Thank you. Mr. Smith? Dylan, Mr. Smith?
There we go. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
I sent a letter out before we leave this agenda item, Mayor, for the council to consider authorizing you to sign to go to our federal delegation with respect to the funding that was given through the CARES Act. It points out a couple of things. One, the funding was only extended directly to jurisdictions having a population over 500,000, which means Commerce City is not going to receive any of that funding directly. And secondly, there was no provision about how Commerce City accesses those funds from either Adams County or from the state of Colorado. So it asked the Treasury Secretary to outline some of those policy provisions and then to consider direct funding communities under 500,000 for any future stimulus related packages. That was emailed out to you all this afternoon. For for your review. And I would just ask if the council's interested in authorizing the mayor to sign that.
Any discussion? Has everybody had an opportunity to read the letter that was sent this afternoon? Anybody want to discuss said letter or make any motions regarding the action to take on said letter? Councilwoman Grimes?
Yeah, excuse me. I know that the letter addresses the question of how does the city access the funds from the county level, but is there a way to reach out and find that information before we issue a letter?
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, we are in communication at the county level and at the state level relative to those issues. And because there isn't any guidance in the bill at this point in time, they're still working to try to receive that guidance from the Treasury Department. And so it's hoped that this letter would help them promulgate some guidance for those entities about how they would utilize those funds in the manner which would benefit our residents.
Thank you. Then I would make a motion to have Mayor Huseman sign that letter.
Councilwoman Allen Thomas?
I'd like to second the motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second to sign the letter. Any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Madera,
Yes.
Councilmember Allen Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Noble,
Yes.
Councilmember Wardiola,
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank,
Yes.
Mayor Huseman,
Yes.
passes 9-0.
Very good. All right, thank you. Any other discussion on the topic of the city's response to the COVID-19 crisis before we move on to the monthly oil and gas update? Councilwoman Allen Thomas?
Yes, I would also like to really give a shout out to Chief Nichols and the Commerce City Police Department in my ward too. Like I said, I'm really happy how they've been monitoring the grocery stores, the local King Soopers, the Walmart. It's put a lot of it's really helped the residents of Commerce City, at least in Ward 2, decrease anxiety and feel a little safety. So I just wanted to say thank you to them also, and for all their hard work on working on this issue for us. So thank you.
Councilwoman Grimes?
Just similarly, just want to thank staff, city staff, for all the hard work they're putting in on the COVID-19 effort. Certainly a huge undertaking, unprecedented as well, and appreciate your hard work, long hours, and commitment to Commerce City.
Councilwoman Noble?
Yes, I'll echo all of that. Thank you all so very much. I really appreciate it. And I know when we get emails coming that are later in night, that means you've been there a very long time. So thank you so much for that. And I'd also like to thank all of those people who live and work and are part of Commerce City, who are essential services and are having to go to work every day. And I will count among them our fellow council member, Robin Smith, who is a paramedic. So thank you very much for all you do, and everyone else who is playing that role, important roles, whether you're working as a clerk at King Soopers, or you're a police officer who's been assigned to the parking lot to tamp down the excitement in the senior line, or you're a paramedic or a firefighter or law enforcement. Thank you. Thank you so much for the sacrifices that you're making right now for everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other requests to speak on the subject, we'll move to the monthly oil and gas update. Will Deputy City Manager Tinkelberg provide that update, please?
I can provide you just a real quick overview. For specific information, we have Jason online with us here, as well as Dominic Martinelli. Really, applications are still being processed. Really, the newest thing is we have requested to be a party with the COGCC proceedings. And what that does is it allows us to weigh in on items that they're considering, and gives us the opportunity to take information back to City Council and get direction from Council and provide that to the COGCC. So if you have specific questions, certainly happy to turn it over to Jason that he can review it with you.
Councilwoman Noble?
Yes, I'm wondering when is the next COGCC hearing on the new regulations or the rulemaking that they're working on? And I also noticed that the deadline for the oil and gas regulations has been postponed to May 29th. I am concerned, though, that we are operating without any underlying regulations other than the old ones, and that if any application comes in, for example, Petro operating, that for the Antelope pad, that could create some problems. Would you recommend that we take action that would hold any applications that might be received until the regulations are finalized because of the COVID-19 situation?
Jason, you want to go ahead and address that?
So yes, thank you, DCM Tinkelberg. So answering your first question, council member, as it relates to COGCC rulemaking, due to the COVID-19 crisis, they have suspended the timeline or the time frame in which they were going to be setting these baseline rulemakings at the state level, and are reassessing that timeline at some time in middle to April to early May. In regards to your question about Antelope, any new oil and gas application, in particular the Petro Oil and Gas, would need to come in and to negotiate a regional operators agreement and BMP document, no different than extraction of oil and gas, and an extraction agreement associated with that. I will note that Petro Operating LLC has submitted a red line version of an ROA and BMP for the city's review as of last week. However, there has been no formal request by Petro to the city to initiate negotiations or establishing conditions for us then to determine how we would identify conditions that would be associated with any future oil and gas permit applications.
Then I think it's imperative that we put an action in place that prevents any further negotiations with Petro until after until we're back in operation and regulations are finalized. We can't have somebody else slip through with the ROA the way that it's written. And I would really implore my fellow council members to stop this one in particular. It's on 104th and Highway 2 in between Turnberry and Aberdeen, and not far from River Oaks as well. It couldn't be in a more critical, impactful place for having that many wells. The city has already taken a position against it in comments, public comments to the COGCC. there should be no further negotiations on Antelope. I would like to make a motion that there are no further negotiations with Petro Operating on any applications or consideration of any potential regional operators agreement.
I have a motion on the table to not negotiate at all with Petro and to halt all negotiations while we are under the current COVID crisis. Before I go out to another council member, City Attorney Sheasley, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mayor. And Ms. Noble, I just want to note the authority for the regional operator agreement is granted by an ordinance in the Land Development Code, and the City Council would need to take action by ordinance to modify or suspend those provisions and revoke the authority granted to the director to do that. I don't believe it could be done by motion alone.
You can't have a moratorium? Can you have a moratorium, Mr. Sheasley?
Thank you. I needed to wait to be unmuted to answer the question.
Okay.
As always, the City Council could enact any legislation it deemed appropriate, including that. It would have to be done in the nature of an ordinance. An ordinance cannot be modified by a motion or a resolution. So the concept of equal dignity, we'd have to prepare an ordinance accomplishing specifically what council wanted to do in that regard. So a motion to stop negotiations with Petro or to inhibit Petro's ability to submit, or anyone's ability to submit an application, would need to be in the form of an ordinance that would modify the Land Development Code.
Then, Mr. Sheasley, could you recommend a motion to me that would achieve what I'm trying to do?
It would have to be a motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance suspending the authority to negotiate regional operator agreements. If you did want to stop that, just to correct one thing that, or clarify something Mr. Rogers said though, Petro would not be required to negotiate a regional operator agreement. They're required to negotiate an extraction agreement under our current regulations. And so if your intention is to prohibit further applications from coming in under the authority that's currently established in our code, it would have to be a moratorium to prohibit new applications or processing new applications. And so a motion to do that would be a motion to direct staff to bring a moratorium doing on X activity, whatever that is.
Okay, that's what I want to do. I want an ordinance. I would like staff to, my motion is for staff to bring back an ordinance that would place a moratorium on extraction agreements, regional operator agreements, and applications until the oil and gas regulations are finalized.
Okay, I have a motion to place a moratorium on any regional operator agreement negotiations, permit applications, and everything else here in.
No, I said, this is what I said. I said I want a moratorium on accepting applications, an extraction agreement, or a regional operators agreement.
Okay, so a motion on a moratorium on regional operator agreements, extraction agreements, or permit applications is your motion. I have a motion at this time. I'm only looking for somebody to second that motion.
Wait. Until the oil and gas regulations are finalized.
Okay, until the oil and gas regulations are finalized. I have a motion out there. I'm looking for a second for that motion.
Please.
Seeing no second for the motion dies. Now, there were two other people, Councilwoman Grimes.
Yeah, I was just curious on the ROA and BMP document from Petro Operating. Is that being drafted from a boilerplate of the extraction ROA and BMPs? Is that a completely new document? Do we have any information on that? And I also just wanted to make a clarifying point. As a lot of people know, I work for a company called Petro Share Corp. Totally different company from Petro Operating.
So our initial quick review of the document that was submitted, council member, was a red line version of the executed extraction oil and gas ROA.
Thank you. And then it just also would comment that Councilwoman Noble, while I appreciate your tenacity and passion for enacting a moratorium, I think that this is a really good time to continue the conversation with a company like Petro Operating regarding what that ROA should say that would put protections in place for the city, and knowing that no applications can be accepted until an extraction agreement's in place. I would just suggest to council that this is a good time to have those negotiations taking place.
All right, any other discussion on this item? Councilman Wadiola?
Thank you. Hey, Jason, are they willing to look at the other ROA that we've done with extraction oil? Because I kind of agree. I think this is a good starting point and see if they want to be partners with us, and you know, what kind of partners they want to be with us.
Good question. We haven't had much dialogue with them outside of receiving the document. We do plan on kind of going through due diligently and looking through it so that we can provide comment back to them. And when we do, we'll engage with them at that point in time per your inquiry.
And just because it's that location, which is a critical location for our residents, I think this has to be really looked through. Very, very careful and with a lot of detail. So thank you.
All right, last call. Any other discussion on oil and gas? Councilwoman Grimes?
Just wanted to clarify with you, Jason, you did say that the ROA you received from Petro their base was the extraction ROA, correct?
Correct. Red line and obviously revised to accommodate their operations.
Absolutely. At what point would council be able to review the red lines that they've suggested, just to see what they're trying to adjust in the existing ROA?
That's a good question. I'd have to defer to the city attorney, given that we do not have a formal application or request into us to advance that.
Mr. Sheasley?
The city council could review it, I believe, almost at any point. Previously, it was done in a confidential manner. As soon as we can figure out a way to do that here, it could be done. I think your staff probably needs to get a handle on what is being recommended. I have not seen a draft at this point either, so I don't know the significance of the changes, but it could be added to a future executive session, which we may be able to do by Zoom or once we're back seeing each other in person again.
Absolutely. I personally would like to see what their red lines look like before you get too far down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
I believe there was a question about the LDC amendments as well that we did not answer, and I would defer to Jason to answer those.
Thank you, DCM Tinkelberg. I think it's worthwhile to kind of share with you where we're at with the LDC update, particularly the public comment period. As you all previously know, we had published a previous schedule that had identified the public comment period to expire on April 10th. Given the COVID-19 crisis, we have extended that date to May 29th. Once again, now this has been published on our social media platforms. It has been updated on our oil and gas webpage as well. Now, to that extent, we do anticipate an overall 2-month process to bring the LDC update forward to City Council for review and obviously final decision. Now, which is targeting a July 20th date for us to be able to bring this forward. In the event COVID-19 continues to present an unprecedented challenge, the public comment period could always be extended accordingly. As far as outreach during this time and period, you'll note in the oil and gas update, we've identified a town hall meeting, virtual town hall meeting tentatively scheduled for 4:30. This is no different from what you have seen with Tri-County Health with their virtual town hall meeting, being able to walk through the proposed language, being able to take comments. We are also planning in having a Spanish version of our town hall meeting with that population to ensure that we are getting the broadest reach and commentation back on this. We have also created a informational video. It is a minute long, which will also be published to our social media and other digital media platforms, both in English and in Spanish. And we will be working with Cultivando as well in hoping to be able to push this informational video out, which will drive traffic to our oil and gas page to where our residents, our members of the community can be able to engage and review the proposed language and be able to provide us feedback. Now, these are just a couple of methods that we are entertaining as part of a much larger and broader public engagement strategy during this time period. And given that we don't have the traditional access to our community, we are conducting stakeholder meetings. We've met with Logic, which is the League of Oil and Gas Impacted Coloradans. We are meeting with our home builder group. And obviously we are standing by our emails in order to take comments that we receive from the community when they do come in.
Thank you for those answers. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Rogers concerning the things he just said? Okay, before we move on to the next topic, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess. So it's 8:44. Let's reconvene at 8:50 and give everybody an opportunity to use the facilities, get a bio break, get something to drink if you need to. Okay.
Dylan, you want to mute me?
right, using my public education here in order to do math. Everybody hear me? We're good? Okay. Okay, thank you for the break there. I want to go back to, I think that Councilwoman Noble had some good points whenever she was trying to get a motion out there. You know, we do have a limited city staff right now. A lot of function is going. We heard earlier about how people are being tasked to perform functions outside their normal role. And that is a little concerning to me that we could potentially have, you know, Petro come in or another operator and another, you know, wanting to take over, whatever, come in and try to submit a permit that we really don't have the resources right now to fully process in the best manner possible. So while I think she was on the right track with her motion, I think there's some things that probably could have been changed, make it a little more amenable to people. So at this time, I'd like to move to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance prohibiting accepting new oil and gas permit applications or processing such applications submitted after April 1st, 2020 until August 1st, 2020. That gives our city staff the opportunity to get back to full strength and make sure that we don't halt progress on any current applications that are already in the system, but only takes care of moving forward with any new applications that go out. So that is my motion. This time I would be looking for a second. Councilwoman Noble.
Would you repeat your motion, please?
Move to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance prohibiting accepting new oil and gas permit applications or processing such applications submitted after April 1st, 2020 until August 1st, 2020 is the motion. Now, I'll give a little more context. You know, yes, I am trying to make sure that we can throw every resource that we need available towards that antelope pad. The antelope pad is the one pad that previous city councils have sat in meetings and said, this is the one pad that we are going to fight. That as a city, we have authorized our staff to go off and do everything possible to get that pad not take place. That is the one pad that everybody agreed on in the room to say, yeah, we don't want that pad to take place. And I am concerned that over the course of the next 4 months, we could potentially have an application for that pad, and we don't have the resources available to properly put the attention towards that pad possible. So that's the purpose of that motion.
I'll second your motion.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Now we'll open it up for discussion. Councilwoman Grimes.
I'd just like some clarification on at what point an operator, an operator can submit an application, a permit application to the City of Commerce City. It seems to me that without an extraction agreement in place, they're not able to submit a permit anyhow.
No, actually, they're able to submit a permit application and the extraction agreement comes afterwards. Case in point, extraction has 8 permit applications in there without an extraction agreement in place for any of those locations. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, we have a motion and a second on the table to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance prohibiting accepting new oil and gas permit applications or processing such applications submitted after April 1st, 2020 until August 1st, 2020. Councilman Hurst.
Sorry, I did have a question to the city staff. What functions are the people who are, is there crossover function? Are the people who are processing the permits focusing on a response effort to COVID-19?
Community Development Director Jason Rogers, I've unmuted you.
Thank you, Dylan. Councilmember Hurst, good question. We are utilizing all of our non-essential staff, particularly this is our planning staff. In this manner of sense, the only planner that we have reviewing oil and gas, which is Dominic Martinelli. He has been deployed to assist in development review applications with our current staff and is also working on business process improvements. Has also been leading our efforts working with the state with grant applications for air quality monitoring and helping to establish a consultant service for an environmental engineer to help us develop policies. So in this essence, this individual is working remotely and providing support services to other essential functions and other critical services that we've deemed a higher priority than the oil and gas permits.
Yeah, because I just feel honestly like this is beating a dead horse. The industry in and of itself has put a no. They're not going to invest a single penny in Colorado. They've come out and said that because of the current regulation environment. You know, with the people losing their jobs left and right that I've been talking to in this market, it seems like we're beating a dead horse on this one. But you know, the only justification I can see behind it is if 100% of our city staff that focuses on processing permits is being utilized in the COVID-19 response. Otherwise, I'm not going to stop a business in this time if we can process them.
And I do think that was the answer that we were given from Mr. Rogers, that yes, the individual that processes these permits has been farmed out to COVID response. Is that correct, Mr. Rogers?
That is correct.
Okay. Councilwoman Grimes.
Can we just get some clarification on the extraction agreement that has to be in place? Maybe Mr. Sheasley could address this, because there is some caveat to getting an approved permit through the city. You cannot just submit a permit and get an approval. You have to have an extraction agreement.
City Attorney Sheasley, I've unmuted you.
That is correct. The extraction agreement is negotiated after the application is submitted, and it's a condition of approval. The regional operator agreement is optional, intended to provide supplements to what we could have previously obtained through regulation before various changes in state law. As with any permit, no individual is ever stopped from submitting a permit if the city is open for business. Whether that permit is ultimately deemed complete and accepted for filing is another question. And then whether it makes it out of that review process, which is the time-intensive part of it, and the time during which an extraction agreement would be negotiated. So people can submit permit applications all the time, and they may not be complete and they may not be approved. But yes, and people can submit applications at this point.
Thank you. I would still maintain then, if we're receiving permit applications for other types of business, I wouldn't be supportive of putting a halt to receiving oil and gas permit applications, especially knowing that the COA getting an extraction agreement is a COA of getting an approval anyhow. So if they take a back burner post submittal because Mr. Martinelli is busy with other COVID-19 assignments, I think that's fine, but I don't see any reason to put a formal moratorium in place at this time.
So keep in mind that this is not a vote on a moratorium. This is a vote on the city manager or city attorney drafting said moratorium. Any other items up for discussion on this? Seeing none, we will take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Madera.
Yes.
Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Noble.
Yes.
Councilmember Wardiola.
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst.
No.
Councilmember Grimes.
No.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank.
Yes.
Mayor Huseman.
Yes.
Passes 6-3.
You recount that 7-2?
Was it 7-2? I apologize.
Okay. All right. One last time, any conversation with Mr. Attorney?
Thank you. I just wanted to note, we didn't clarify that whether that would be an emergency or a standard ordinance. We'll prepare it in both forms for the next available city council meeting.
Thank you. Any other conversation regarding the monthly oil and gas update before we move on? Very good. Moving on to the Suncor update, Mr. Smith.
Deputy City Manager Smith, you're unmuted.
Thank you. The Suncor report actually went out in the city manager's report last week. So there's information in there relative to Suncor activities. The only new information I have that wasn't contained in that report was about them shutting down part of their facility for production. You may have seen stories in the media about 95% passenger decrease at DIA. And certainly the governor's stay-at-home order has had a tremendous impact on the motoring public. As a result, fuel capacity demand has gone way down. And so they're managing their storage and production of new fuels out of the facility and consequently shut down part of their operations. That was not contained in the report and is new information since it was sent to you in the city manager's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Are there any questions for Mr. Smith regarding the Suncor update? Councilwoman Noble.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. I am concerned that the residents who live around the Suncor refinery didn't receive notification when the catalyst spewed from plant 2. And I want us to find out why that isn't happening and how we can be the catalyst for making it happen. These are our residents who are facing COVID-19 at the same time they're living with emissions and other upsets, as the industry likes to call it. But somehow we have to be able to keep our residents as safe as possible. I hate to see these things even happening, but at least they should be notified when they do happen.
So I can only speak to our notification and the incidents that have occurred most recently. Once we became aware of the information, we shared that with City Council and certainly took actions out in the community when we were dispatched there through the police department. The primary authority for notifying the community through our dispatch center would be the fire department. The fire district has that authority because of the release. It's not something the police department regulates. Having said that, I'm not sure what their reporting criteria are for contacting the 911 communications center when they have a release or not. And that's certainly something we can check into.
That would be really wonderful if you would do so, Mr. Smith. I'd really appreciate if there is some way for the residents in that area to be on a reverse 911 call and not have to rely on. Previously, they were notified by the schools in December, and of course, the schools aren't in session, so no one let them know. They had to watch it on the news or see it float through the air. So thank you very kindly.
Yeah, the December 11th incident notifications were certainly slow getting to our first responders and to the city. I'm not sure about the March 17th event and how those notifications went, but to your point, I just want to reiterate that the agency that would have the authority for initiating a reverse 911 call, and there is criteria for that outlined in our communications center, would be the fire department. So what I can follow up on Suncor with is about their notification protocols and if that does or does not include the 911 center.
That would be great. You could let them know that we're concerned about our resident.
Will do.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion regarding Suncor? Seeing no other, we'll move forward. We've already got an update from Deputy City Manager Tinklenberg on both 112th Avenue and the traffic signals. So we will move into discussing future council and board commission meetings. Mr. McBroom, would you like to lead this discussion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. City Council had some discussion earlier about frequency of meetings. Seems as if there's a couple of different sides to this. One is frequency of meetings, and then purpose of meetings. The longer the crisis goes on, the more it seems necessary for us to conduct what I might call regular City Council business that's unrelated to the COVID-19 crisis. We've had a couple of actions that came up tonight that would need to come back to City Council for action. So frequency, regular business back on City Council meetings would be a factor. And then the third part is this question of whether we want to move back to holding regular City Council meetings, which include some required elements that special meetings don't, most especially citizen communication. Or do you want to keep scheduling these as special meetings, which allows us to structure the agendas a little bit differently? I also heard some comments earlier from council members about facilitating hearing from the community about how the crisis is going and what they need from city government during the crisis. So I don't think there's an easy answer here. As I've heard the discussion tonight, it sort of suggests to me that we move back to a regular meeting schedule, only continue conducting them electronically. So as an introduction, I'll kind of hand it back to the mayor to see what comments or feedback council members have about a meeting schedule and whether those should be regular meetings or special meetings.
Thank you. Before I open it up for comments, I would say that I am all in favor of going back to regular meetings that are conducted via electronics in order to maintain our social distancing requirements. Seeing now the governor this evening extended the stay-at-home order until the 26th of April. He is optimistic based on the data that he is seeing that will get shortened up and that we can come out of this a little bit sooner. But that would basically go through every normal meeting that we would have in the month of April, as well as potentially, take out the first meeting in May as well. I think that's personally, I think that's too long for us to go without conducting business. I think we have the technology. This is the 21st century. We have the ability to conduct business. We've proven we can do meetings like this. I think we need to start expanding it and go back to a regular meeting schedule that allows the community the opportunity to participate in meetings as well. So I am all in favor of that. Councilwoman Grimes.
Would absolutely second that or echo that idea. I think it's time to go back to regular meetings. I would like to see an element of constituent participation built back in, though, if we're going to continue doing Zoom meetings for social distancing.
Very well, thank you. I think something we should consider, as long as we're doing these Zoom meetings, our normal study sessions are replaced with a council meeting that allows community to input and gives us more opportunity to hear from community members, as opposed to April 13th being a study session that, again, does not allow the community to speak. That basically means for over an entire month, the community is not allowed to have any input on whatsoever during any of the meetings. And I don't think that's the right way to go. So I would say that the way forward should be April 13th, April 20th, and April 27th would be regular council meeting through Zoom that would allow community to participate. Councilman Hurst.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess like Brian said, that easy answer, because I fully agree. We need to get to work. We need to be operating at this time. But I also understand the demand that it puts on our staff to prepare these meetings. And so we got to find the balance that works there. And so some type of schedule that we can get work done still, but within the balance of work that can be done. I like your idea, Mr. Mayor, or Mayor Huseman, of replacing study sessions. My idea, not trying to replace that one, but my idea was can we do? Obviously, we have to do social distancing, so we limit the amount of feedback we can get from the community. I was thinking we've done the telephone town halls in the past, and I'd be willing to, dedicate 2 hours to each ward back to back, to just do 4 hours a night, where Ward 1 would get to go first and they can submit questions through email beforehand. And then we can, get into the first hour of answering the stuff that we got before the meeting happened. And then the second hour would be to live questions. Always taking questions through chat if needed, and then have a moderator to help us through that. But those are just another idea to put out there to see how we can balance having productive meetings that don't go well into the night, but still allowing to have citizen communication that has been missing for quite some time, especially for the circumstances.
Councilman Madera?
Yeah, I think we should be on a regular schedule. I think part of the problem that we can't get or have citizen communication is because we spring these meetings up with such short notice that it doesn't really give citizens an opportunity to review the agenda, see if they want to comment, and then submit those comments. So I think if we get on a regular 2-week schedule like we normally would, have the agenda come out earlier, and really limit it to only crucial things. Because I mean, right now our staff is working on with the skeleton crew, and you know, the resources are being dedicated to this response. As much as I know we'd like to feel like we need to get back to work, I think right now the best thing we can do is stay out of the way. You know, by causing more work for staff to prepare these meetings for us and get all the materials that we need, you know, like for a town hall, all that comes from staff giving us the information and the background to answer these questions. So if we're pulling away resources for that to have these meetings, then we're pulling people away from the responses for seniors, for our essential employees, and for grocery workers, and you know, all these different aspects that we're trying to coordinate right now. So for me, it's, you know, it's a delicate balance. We can't just have meetings to have meetings. It has to be critical business. And right now, the most critical business is, to me, is the most basic functions, right? What do people need to survive and get through this next month that we're staying at home? And, you know, what do we need to keep people social distanced? And, you know, to me, that's not having meetings about, you know, permitting or land use cases and these types of things. It's what staff is doing right now every day is, you know, coordinating, making sure that seniors have assistance, that people are checking in with their neighbors, and, you know, if someone needs help, to let us know so we can do something about it. So, you know, to me, have it every 2 weeks. Maybe get rid of study sessions altogether, you know, because that's just another thing on staff's plate that they have to prepare for. And have the agendas out at least a week in advance. That way citizens can review the agenda, write their comments in, and then we can have time to properly incorporate them in the meetings.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Wadiola?
Yeah, I'm all in favor of the regular meetings, but I definitely want to take in consideration staff. They're going through this situation also, and they have families, they have kids that they have to homeschool, and adding more on their plate is only going to limit our function as a city. So I would definitely be strategic. I think we should start meeting regularly. This meeting, I mean, all the information, if we would have met previously, it would have been smaller meeting or shorter. So I think regularly, but be very strategic on the stuff we're giving staff. They're not at the building. They're with their families. Like I said, a lot of them are homeschooling and working, and then we add more. So it has to be very strategic, but we have to get back into that routine. So I would agree to get back into that routine with a strategic plan of what we put on these agendas.
Councilwoman Allen Thomas?
Yes, and I would just like to add, if possibly, maybe we could go, I think we should meet more frequently, but maybe like explore every other week or something like that, because especially being a family nurse practitioner, and I know Councilwoman Smith is also a first responder, I like to devote a lot of my time being a resource to my residents. I pick up extra hours now on the phone, triaging patients. So right now, I think too, it's a matter of helping the community I know Robin is real busy. I'm helping out too. So I think it's important we get back to regular meetings, but yet we do have medical professionals that are on council as well. Like I said, I'm a family nurse practitioner and helping out even on my block. So I do think residents see that as well too, because I help as much as I can. And I think staff, like I said, they're home as well. So until this pandemic is under better control, I agree we should meet more frequently, but yet I would like to take some of my council hours and give back to the community as well. Thank you.
Councilwoman Noble.
Yes, I agree with Councilmember Alan Thomas, and thank you for your time too as a nurse practitioner. Very appreciated. I think doing it not doing the study sessions, but doing city council meetings, and not technically a meeting. I wasn't suggesting that we, vote on land use things and that sort of stuff, but just being a touchstone for the community that we're here and that they have an opportunity to ask questions, maybe like a meeting / town hall, not quite as formal as a typical city council meeting, just because of all of the undue pressures right now that staff is under because of this crisis. And so I agree with that. I think not every week would be good.
Councilman Hurst.
I was just going to ask because everybody's on, I'm assuming everybody's on somewhat of a change of schedule. Would it benefit the group to discuss starting meetings at 5? Just so I know not everybody has the same situation, having meetings at home. My kids, you could probably hear them every once in a while. It just, would it help? Would it benefit to start the meetings any different time?
Okay, lots of discussion out there. Does anybody want to take action? Mr. McBroom?
I appreciate the discussion from council members. Certainly the staff time it takes to properly prepare agenda items, get the packet out, facilitate a good action meeting does take time, and we are spread pretty thin. I think if the city council reinstituted the regular meetings on the first and third Mondays, we can manage capacity by being very thoughtful about what actions appear on the city council agenda on that first and third Monday. There would then be an opportunity to take citizen communication. So if the business agenda is not extensive, and we just would have limited ability to load a bunch of regular agenda items on an agenda. So if the regular business is not extensive, you have time for citizen communication, and we can also provide the sort of updates that we provided tonight. I think that's reasonable and doable, although it would be a stretch for us. Meeting every week would be tough, unless our normal study session nights were just these sort of verbal updates. They still take time. They still take time to gather our notes and be able to provide a thoughtful update. As Mr. Guardiola said, if it's every Monday, it would be a shorter update. So I would suggest one of those two options, either regular meetings on the first and third electronically with citizen communication, a limited business agenda focused on critical items, and then an opportunity to provide staff updates. If council would prefer updates more frequently, we could either do those on those second and fourth Mondays as well, or with some, we can certainly glean from council's discussion tonight how we may be able to prepare a written update that might provide more information that would be useful to council on those off weeks as well. So just some additional things to think about.
So to clarify my comments on using our study sessions, it's more directed towards what City Manager McBroom said about using those opportunities as a way to provide updates on what's going on in the city. While the written updates are good, I think that we struggle to get written information out to some residents. Not every resident is on social media. Not every resident can see the emails that are going out to everybody. Whereas having these updates that are taking place live on Channel 8 and also on the website provides them an opportunity to see that information. So that second and fourth Monday that would normally be a study session, having a very brief, just, hey, here's what's going on, here's where we sit in Commerce City, do you have any questions, and taking citizen input would be valuable on that. I definitely agree that only doing business that is correct, so absolutely necessary or time sensitive, such as when we had to make the extensions on the dog track project, things like that, are the items that should be taking place on the agenda, as well as the opportunity for residents to provide their feedback on and provide an update on the things that they need to see within our city. Councilwoman Grimes.
I'd like to make a motion to reinstate regular city council meetings on the first and third Mondays of the month until normal operations resume. No study sessions, and only conduct limited critical business during council meetings, and also allow for citizen communication.
Okay, so your motion does not take into account the second and fourth Thursday having minimal meetings for the purpose of updates, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I have a motion out there. Mayor Pro Tem Frank.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second out there. Now time for discussion. Councilwoman Noble.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I said I was going to second the motion. That's why I raised my hand.
Councilman Hurst.
Yeah, I still would like to see weekly communication. I really, it doesn't have to be specially prepared. I mean, we're getting daily information. And as the mayor pointed out, not everybody receives information the same way. And this being recorded leaves a great opportunity to go back and hear the people that we hope they trust the most to get the right information to them, discuss it. So I'm not even opposed to having Tuesday meetings where we're getting information from the state, the county, and then preparing something from the city in conjunction with those. And then just having council members read it and having limited staff input needed for those. We can always write follow-up questions to be addressed at the next week's meeting, but because this is an unprecedented event, and you can get your news from a million sources, trying to have a weekly update from our one local source, I think would be a positive thing. And then if it becomes too much of a hassle, we can address back to, updates every 2 weeks as we start to gain some normalcy back, maybe hopefully in a couple weeks or so.
Thank you for that. Councilman Madera.
So my only concern with that is we're getting so much information already. I mean, on a daily basis, I get information from the county, Tri-County Health, the city, then I get Governor Polis's update, as everyone else is too. So I think at this point, it would be almost overkill and just another source and, more confusion. So I think if we can limit that to just regular council meetings and have those updates, because at what point does it become too much information, right? Because then we just become another voice out there in a sea of voices. And who do you listen to? Do you listen to the city? You listen to the governor? And so I think having more information isn't always good unless we're repeating the same information. So I think it just puts another burden on staff, because staff is already communicating out there through our newsletter. They sent out special postcards to all seniors, and they're calling people directly that are at risk or our senior communities. So staff is already doing so much to get the communication out there, and just because we don't see it on doesn't mean that it's not happening. So to me, I think it's more effective having staff out there doing all the heavy lifting that they've been doing than having it out here on Channel 8 where we're trying to rehash the information and not conveying it as well as staff has been.
Thank you. Councilman Wadiola?
Hey, Brian, is there a way we could put the updates you guys send us on Channel 8 as slideshow so people could just turn it to Channel 8 and the slide goes on? And then also if they could put it in our live stream or just thinking outside of the box, because they're right. I think people get different information from different mediums of places. And if we could have a slideshow going on Channel 8 all day of the COVID stuff that you guys send us, and then on the website, and then we do the social media already, the Instagram. That way we're hitting everything instead of coming together and then just being on live TV.
I think we can do that. Again, what you're talking about is information that's already available. It's information we're already sharing in other ways. It would just be repackaging it to more conveniently show it on Channel 8 for those who aren't watching Twitter and Facebook. We can work on that.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Grimes?
I love that idea, Councilman Guardiola. I think that's a really great way to put that information out there on the off weeks when we're not meeting. And then I just also wanted to ask, is there a way council can help with some of those calls? Is there a way we can get involved with reaching out to some of the folks that need to be contacted? Is that something we can get involved in?
I would have to reach back out to our team that's been working on that function and see if they have enough capacity to make all the contacts that they think are necessary. What we have been doing is employees, particularly our 2 rec centers who haven't been able to perform their normal functions, we've been putting them to work doing some of those kinds of things, but we'll certainly ask.
Great, thank you.
All right, seeing no other calls for conversation, I have a motion and a second on the table to reinstate our regular meeting to be conducted via virtual means until the lockdown order and social distancing is no longer required. We will take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Madera,
Yes.
Councilmember Alan Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Noble,
Yes.
Councilmember Guardiola,
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank,
Yes.
Mayor Huseman.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you very much. All right, that is the last of our agenda items. Is there anybody out there that wishes to discuss anything else and would like to seek unanimous consent from the council to discuss that? Councilwoman Grimes.
Just curious if we could discuss repurposing the cart paths during the closure of the golf course for allowable walking paths for folks who live near the golf course.
I have a request to discuss repurposing golf course paths during this shutdown so that people can use them for walking trails. Are there any council members that object to having that discussion? Seeing none, please proceed.
I think it would be a nice gesture to extend some additional open space, outdoor areas where people can get out and walk their dog, go out and walks with their kids. Lots of people live directly adjacent to the golf course, and it seems like an easy thing to do while the course is shut down. I understand that once we're open back up at the golf course, that's got to stop for safety reasons. But in the meantime, just one more place for people to get out and kind of enjoy some fresh air during this time.
Mr. McBroom, do you have any input on the feasibility of doing so?
It's a great thought. Councilwoman Grimes had mentioned that to me late last week. I did have a chance to share it with some of our folks, but it hasn't had robust discussion at the staff level. I don't know if our Parks and Rec folks have been able to weigh in. I know one of the concerns that was initially raised is how do we limit that activity to just the cart paths and not end up with, and we don't end up turning the golf course into a large park with people using the turf for all sorts of other reasons. So on the one hand, it's a walking trail easily accessible to folks who live nearby. And if people are going to get out and exercise, we want them to do it close to their homes. I understand there have been some people out walking on the cart paths already. But we did hear that one concern raised about the difficulty in limiting activity to just the cart paths. What I would suggest, if council is willing, give us an opportunity to explore that with staff, and then report back to council if we think that can be done without creating other problems.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Brian. That sounds good.
Great. I don't believe the city attorney can correct me, but I don't believe that's anything that we need to take city council action item on.
That's correct. The city manager would be able to make that decision ultimately.
Very good. Thank you. Any other requests to discuss anything that is not on our agenda? Seeing none, I thank everybody for your time this evening. I think it was very productive. There being no further business to come before the City of Commerce City, we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.